Robat, Robat. Welcome to the Actual Facts podcast, the Actual Facts channel. For those that are just tuning in for the first time, I'm Dr. Doosua York. For those that have continued to support and view the channel, our subscribers, welcome back again for another dynamic lecture. This is episode 18. It is who are the African tribes of the Bible? Now, of course, it is customary for us to acknowledge the Heavenly Father in flesh, His Excellency Dr. Malachi Z. York, the author of over 1,500 books. This Actual Facts channel teaches nothing but facts as it has been given to us by His Excellency, our President, our Chief, the Master, right? As you know, those that are familiar with Dr. Malachi Z. York's books, he has an expansive amount of information that he has taught to the planet, to the children of Paa Nabab, your ancestors, the ancestors of the Ngardanet race, the African race, and their descendants. And this doctrine is a liberating doctrine. It allows you to question things that you've been taught for the last 6,000 years from foreigners, to address the facts and get clarification on the many different topics that we have been hearing in our lifetime as it relates to our story, right? But you also have misinformation and religious doctrines that has clouded the minds of our people for so long. And now we are blessed after the year 2000 with this hereafter doctrine. And in the hereafter doctrine, it's based on irrefutable facts. The religious world, the belief systems, the misinformation, the fables, the myths have been found out that they fall on deaf ears because there's no empirical proof to back any of these doctrines up. We've been given these Bibles and Qur'ans and other texts that have claimed to be authentic, claimed to be from the words of God, the right, handwritten, some people say inspired. There's many different concepts about this God being, or this Allah, Jehovah, Yahweh. And we have many episodes. If you check out episodes, the past episodes, that covers many different topics, particularly religious doctrines, questions on the vast amount of information that His Excellency Dr. York has given us. But today, specifically, we are going to address the African tribes of the book of this biblical text. Why African tribes? Well, because most people are under the assumption, let me not say most people. Let me say the religious world has confused most people, and having them not clear on who exactly these tribes are, from the Adamites, the first so-called creation of this God being, right? That molded this man from the dust of the earth and popped the rib out and created the feminine or female Hawa or Eve, right? So when you look at the tribes that exist from Genesis down, there's no real specificity on who exactly these beings are. Where the Black tribes, the African tribes come out of, where the Caucasoid tribes come out of, what descendancy are we addressing when we talk about the Israelites from Abraham's seed? Better yet, let's go back to Noah, Utna Pishtim, right, of the ancient Sumerian text. We'll find him there in Atrahasis, right? They don't have any definitive answer of the bloodline and the lineages that have seeded the planet. If scientists or the religious world claims that this one person with the multitude of diversity of genetics around the world, they want us to accept that the planet has been seeded by one being, and he's the father of all races and the father of all cultures and the father of all genetic genome structures and races and species and nationalities. And of course, in the age of information, the way that scientists and archaeologists and geneticists have decoded genes, all of that has been debunked. So if you are to accept this biblical text, you have to understand who these records are for, why they were written, right? What texts are original, if they are original, if any originals exist, where these tribes in these texts migrated, right? How did they become a part of the modern day, let's say, religious cultures or doctrines that teach that we're from Abraham, we're from Isaac, we're from Jacob, we're from Ishmael, we're from Midian, we're from Sarah, with all of those particular characters. So we're going to try to navigate through this misinformation with the actual facts that has been presented to us in basically 6 books. Now, typically, Rahobat, everyone, thanks for tuning in. It's been some time. Peace to the chat. I appreciate. Let everyone know that we are live. If those that want to join, friends or family, or Mossad and Nuwapians worldwide, Sabians worldwide, all of our family, let them know if you can forward the link so we can get into this. Now, typically in most of our lectures, we make reference to the books that the father, where we find this information for your further research, because you may want after you hear the lecture, you may want to gather more information. And the father has these 6 publications that touches on these particular topics, right? One is history, which we pull from to answer this question: what tribes are African? What are the African tribes? Obviously, there's other tribes there because there's all types of races and people across the planet. So history, Hakehu, actual fact number 73, addresses this topic specifically in great detail. 2, my brother, the extraterrestrial, covers the Canaanite seed. It also covers why Noah or Ham's son was cursed. His 4th son, Canaan, was cursed with the disease of leprosy or leproma, Hansen's disease. What caused this? What caused this violation where he was cursed? The genetics was cursed. What happened when he walked in on his father in the tent, Noah, after he became drunk or intoxicated? How that all took place? Why was he considered perfect in his generation and his genes? So we're going to cover that as well. Also, the language of time covers the bloodline or the Nagardanat, the African seed from the Nephtahim, which is one of the seeds that was protected from that lineage, right? And how Ishmael descendants Ishmael married obviously an African woman. His mother, Hagar, was African, Egyptian. And so that seed is there in that bloodline. That is covered in the language of time. Also, Ham seed, which is number 3, actual fact. So His Excellency lays that out in those 4. Also, we have designer genes, number 22, good and evil, number 31, actual fact. Now, we covered this topic somewhat, but we didn't get into the actual genetics and the bloodlines that were mixed in that caused let's say, cutting off or isolating, right, of quarantining some of the disease blood and the genetics of specific seeds in Genesis, specifically the Canaanites and their 11 tribes. Also, what African seeds migrated into Africa? Did Judah migrate into Africa? We're going to cover that. Did Ishmael, what Ishmaelites, the descendants of the Ishmaelites, the Kedarites. Also, you have the Judahites, the Beshemethites, as well as the Israelites and the Dinaites. Now, we all know that that these are tribes that are quite popular in the Genesis story, but we don't know where they migrated and what seed are we descendants from. A lot of people are under the impression that we're from all of Israel, and that's not true. A lot of the Israelites were mixing in with the Canaanites, and they brought in this disease blood that caused certain scaling or skin boils, skin patches. You have the description in Leviticus that shows what this Hansen's disease or what leprosy these Canaanites had spread abroad and how it got into the blood. That's why a lot of the diseases that you see today amongst human beings comes from this Canaanite seed who had mixed in and brought in sexually transmitted diseases. A lot of your STDs, most of them are skin diseases that are typically related to leprosy. Most of this leproma or this disease comes out of the skin in various forms. Not all are heavy. Not all are very severe. You have some that are Rahobat Musar. Good to see you all again. It's been some time. Some of these diseases come out as in the form of dandruff. Acne is a form of leprosy. Herpes is a form of leprosy. Most eczema, many of your skin, psoriasis, right? Rosacea, right? These are diseases that come out in the skin. But where did they come from? A lot of those diseases, when you see the Genesis story, you'll see the description in Leviticus, not necessarily Genesis. I'm talking about the 5 books of the Torah. You see in Leviticus that it speaks about the characteristics: yellow, thin hair, boils in the skin, scabs, and they would quarantine this specific tribe. But how did this tribe mix in? And who did they mix in with? And who were the black seed out of that the Father points out in our religious symbol, where the 6 points that you see recently, you see it here, right? This 6 points where that represents these particular tribes. Now, there were about 5 tribes or 6 tribes that were protected, and we'll get into that. But how were they protected? They were protected simply because the species that was responsible for breeding the Adamites, and we're going to cover this because this question comes up a lot, and the Father speaks about it a lot in the hereafter doctrine. These beings known as the Elohim or the Anunnaki. These Anunnaki we addressed in several lectures. You should be familiar with them and their bloodline. However, what is not known is that the bloodlines that the Anunnaki mixed in with, that genetic gene is an extraterrestrial gene. It's a gene that comes from these 2 groups of beings. 2 of these beings, Enki and Enlil, we discussed them before, but we have to be redundant because the Father mentions it several times and covers it in many different publications. So for you all that don't have access to the publications, this is the actual facts we're bringing it to you. Now, you have the Enlilites who's the son of Anu, right? One of the sons of Anu, and known as Nu Emnir was his name. Enlil, he was the master of the skies. He was a being over you've known this term before, the cherubim, right? These cherubim or cherubim, as you know, they were the offspring of the cherubim, also are known as the Igigi. And sometimes you'll see Igigi pop up in the Sumerian text. You see Igigi pop up in the book of Enoch, these lost books or books that were not put in the biblical text. Enlil was over this group. You see these cherubim at the tabernacle or the covenant, the Ark of the Covenant they're described in Exodus as being on the east and west side of the 2 sides of this tabernacle, which was a communication device. And this communication device obviously was to communicate with this group of beings, these Elohim, these gods, these Anunnaki, these cherubim and seraphim. The cherubim were under Enlil, and the seraphim or seraphim were under Enki. Now, both of these sons had offspring. Now, these offspring are the characters of the Genesis story, the us in the Genesis story. And the breeding process that takes place was a genetic process. It wasn't a mythological spook thing where some mud was grabbed and made this being man with all of his organs and cells and ribs and blood and brain, and the intricacies of the biological structure of human beings did not come out of mud. This was a genetic experiment. The Genesis story or the biblical Old Testament stories are copies from the Sumerian text or the older text in the Nineveh, as we discussed, and I think in episode 5. Now, so you're not aware of the details of how the story in Genesis takes place. what is known is that these were physical beings with a genetic and genes. When you read the story, you'll see that they came down and actually intermingled with human beings. They had sex with these human beings, but you're not aware of what seed exactly it was. The seed that raped this Adamite, this new breed, this 6,000-year-old creation, were of the Enlilites. And this was let's say a defilement against their seed, because they were not allowed to intermingle or have sex with the Adamites. And that's why the Genesis story, when you read chapter 6 throughout, you'll see the various species in there. You see that they took or raped these Adamites. This word Adam comes from the word ruddy, right? Or rud, or let's say red, right? With this red being, this new pale being. This was not the creation of all of species, all of human beings. This was a specific experiment that these Anunnaki had to, when they had to breed a slave worker. And we addressed this before, but we're going to get into like the characters. Now, Enlil's descendants, first of all, let's get to the breeding happened 49,000 years ago, right? And with this character or species or specimen known as Cadman, this is the Adam. His other name was Adapa, right? And he was to work and breed along with the simians. The simians was used at mammals of the planet. The primates was used in the breeding process. And in that breeding process, the genes of the Anunnaki were used. That's why it says, let us make a man. And then the breeding or the species of the planet, they use various simian primates to breed this new being. And because of the various characteristics of the primates, you have the orangutan with red hair. You have the the chimpanzee with black hair. And then you have the gibbon with the yellow hair, right? And so amongst this Adamite, in the genes of this new species were all of these ancient prehistoric primates that evolved from the planet already, right? So when these Anunnaki or these Elohim came to the planet to breed, they already found species here. And in finding those species, they used the genes of those species, they used their genetics, and they also used a species known as the Pleiadians, who were amongst the species of extraterrestrials, Elohim, angels, whatever word makes you feel comfortable, beings from above that came to this planet, they were used in this whole breeding process. Everyone had their intentions on why they were breeding this Adamite or why they would use this Adamite. And that's why this new species had several purposes. One was to work, another was for actually flesh, and to be killers, right? To protect the genes of this descendancy. They wanted to protect their seed on the planet, so they bred the killing instinct into this species. Now, this is all experimental. This was not something that was already foresaw or knew how this species would turn out. So they were experimenting to create a worker to help in their project of mining, as we discussed, for gold in the caves and the underground caverns where they were looking for gold, which we'll address maybe in the next episode, part 2. We will address that question came up. Why would they need mining? Why would they have to mine for gold with their advanced technology? Somebody was asking that these beings traveling intergalactically, why would they need to come to gold, right? To come to get gold and use a slave? Why couldn't they just extract gold with some high advanced technology? And so we have to address the rules of natural nature and the intergalactic rules of beings that come into this planet. So there's rules that govern the universe. There's rules that govern intergalactical travels. There's not just a random thing where species can come and go into different planets, because various planets are owned by different beings, right? There's billions of planets throughout many different universes. So there's laws that govern and rules that govern the universes, multiverses, and there's rules that govern the planet. So beings coming to this planet can't just do what they want to do, because this planet is not owned by any species coming here. This planet was a project by our ancestors that are in control and birth natural nature, right? And they have methods, and there's ecosystems, and there's order to the universe. It's not out of order where beings just do what they want to do. There's an intergalactical federation that's responsible for keeping things in fit order. Some species rebel against this order, like the draconians, and they have to be dealt with. Now, so just coming Nibiru, this craft that these Anunnaki traveled on, and coming into this atmosphere, not this atmosphere, they can't come into this atmosphere, but they use various crafts to come in closer. This breeding happened 49,000 years ago, and it was 6,000 years ago that this new breed, the Mu'adamu, or the Adamites in our language, who were male, right, and Ashash, female. That's why it says in Genesis, male and female created he them, because this was a species that was being bred, not just two people. Though they had the name Adam and Eve, it wasn't Adam as a person. Yes, he was a being, Cadman, but Adamites were a species as well. And so this breeding, they were not aware of how it would turn out. And because they used various species, like I explained, the primates, the father explains in the Bigfoot book as well, and other publications, Intelligent Design, that this new creation was very hostile, and it had a killing nature. And because of that, these laws and orders had to be given to them, called the Levy, or from the fourth son of Jacob, which was Leviathan, tying into the Draconians, which we discussed before. But the laws was given to these specific beings to keep them in fit order, to keep them under control, because they were breeding out of control. One, which Enlil didn't like. Enki and Marduk, his descendancy, because they were, this was an experimental aspect, as experimental project. Everyone wasn't necessarily in agreement with how these beings were to be bred. The Enlilites, or Enlil and his descendants, didn't want them to freely be able to have sex and make decisions on their own. And the Enkyites, right, gave them a little leeway, because the genetics of the Anunnaki were in their genes. So they looked at them as their bloodline, right? And this is why Noah was chosen out of the descendants once they saw how these beings turned out. As you read in Genesis chapter 6, you'll see that they became evil and wicked continuously, and they saddened their creators. Their deities, or their Anunnaki, were really upset at the fact that these beings had become wicked, and they were, as it says, wicked and evil continuously in their heart. And so they decided to destroy them. Now, that was further down, but who the beings that were placed over them, the Enlilites, the watchers that were placed over them, right? 200 was placed over them, 200 beings, let's say 20 of their leaders, actually, and the 200 fell because they violated the watchers' laws, or the Enlilites, Enlil, one of the sons of Anu, they violated the law of not mixing in with that breed. But they, as these watchers who were in the heavens, Enlil, as a being who were the master of the skies, the watchers who was his descendants or his sons watched this Adamite, this creation. They were given the order, don't mix your seed with them. The Enkyites didn't have that law. Enki and his descendants didn't have the law of not mixing their seed. They were involved with these species, sexually involved with these species, because they watched the Adamites have sex. They watched them, and the let's say art of the sexual activity was taught to them from the red stone, which was one of the me stones, which is a science of lust and love and sex in that stone, which is actually like a computer program that had to teach the Kama Sutra, right, which is there. The Hindus teach it as well. The art of sex and the science of sex. There's two aspects of that outformation. Now, these Adamites were having sex and enticing. They were having sex in the open. The watchers above, the Enlilites, descendants, came down and saw the daughters of men, the daughters of the Adamites, and they began to mix their seed with them. They began to rape them. They began to take them and have children by them, these giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, you see that as well. They became mighty men. So this demigods, this genetic raping of this cherubim seed, this is the cherubim side. Enlil sides, these are disagreeable beings. They're very vicious. They don't have a religious doctrine like you to say, well, be all good. That's not in the multiverses balancement or species that you'll find in this, the Father teaches in this hereafter doctrine amongst extraterrestrials. You don't find that nature, the nature of all good, all bad. That's a doctrine that was created for religious purposes to control human beings, to say, follow me, do this. If you don't, you're considered negative. You're going to receive judgment. That was a doctrine that was created later, this good or bad doctrine. That doesn't exist amongst these beings. Now, you do have the agreeable seed of the Inky side. That's the Seraphim. That's who Melchizedek descendants come out of. That's Marduk descendants. Inky and his bloodline who mixed into the African seed, or the African tribes that were already in Africa through the sands. They were there millions of years before this Genesis story. Now, the reason why, the question is, why are we asking what African seed are in the Bible? So you'll be able to distinguish that the Adamites are not the Africans. The descendants of the Adamites, the Sethites, are not the African seed. The Canaanites are not the African seed. Abraham's descendants, Noah is not an African seed. Noah was 3-part extraterrestrial. He was 3-part Anunnaki because Nanar, who was the son of Enlil, mixed in with Hawa and actually Eve. And that's why it says in Genesis, I've gotten a man from the Lord, right? Who was Seth, right? And that was a specific bloodline. And that seed had the Anunnaki seed inside. And therefore, to protect the Anunnaki seed, because this is their book, this is their records. Inside of Genesis, you'll see these beings, their children are there. And their children are moving throughout the book down to Noah. And Noah, because he was part shapeshifter, part of the Enlilites, of the cherubim, he was looked at as perfected, not as good. People are making perfect synonymous with good. No, you can be a perfect evil person, meaning that you've perfected evil. You've perfected killing. You've perfecting rape. You've perfected lying. You have this perfected attribute of evil where you become perfect in your genes. The genes of these disagreeable or cherubim seed was in Noah or Utnapishtim, and because of his the drinking, that enticed it excited him in a way where he began to shapeshift. And when Ham went in and saw his father in that state, right, which he was not supposed to do. How do you know that? Well, because none of the beings, when they came to this planet, you were not allowed to see them. And that's why in Exodus, it speaks about Exodus, where it says Moses was not to see the face of the Lord. They only showed their backside, because if you saw the true form of these beings, you would not live. You would literally be frightened, because these beings are not what you think based on a religious doctrine. The Father has to clear up who these beings are and their bloodlines. And so you'll be aware of why this Noah seed was protected. And in his appreciation, he offered up flesh and blood to these Enlilites. After the flood, you'll see that he placed all of the animals on the altar for these beings to consume the flesh. You'll see that in Genesis chapter 9. But let's go back to the Igigi and the watchers of the Enlilites. Over them were, let's read the names of the 20 leaders who were over the 200 fallen, right? How did they fall? They fell from the heavens because it wasn't Ningizida that impregnated Eve. It was Nanar. Nannar and who gave birth, and even Cain was Nannar's descendants. One of Cain was the son of Nannar, who was of the being of who was of the sacrifice, right? I'll get to, excuse me, I know maybe jumping from point to point, it's a lot to cover. I want to have it organized as well as answer your questions. Cain was protected. He was a killer because he had the blood of Nannar in his seed as well, in his genetics. And he was of the land of, his descendants were in the land of Nod. If you notice, this Lord, this being was, this Nannar being protected Cain from being killed in the land of Nod. Why did he protect Cain? Because that was his seed. Why did he protect Noah from the flood? Because that was of their seed. And because that cherubim seed was there, these Anunnaki had an interest in these particular bloodlines. Even when you go down to Abraham's descendants, where Abraham was to marry Sarah, or his wife Sarah, they couldn't mix in because Sarah had the Anunnaki seed as well. So they had to alter her genetics so Abraham could have a son or a child by Sarah. But it also came out in the seed with who? Esau and Jacob. Esau and Jacob, who was the sons of Isaac. It came out in the genetics. This is why Esau was hairy and he had the red fur, and he was considered Sa'ir, which is the term that they use in the Hebrew Strongs for hairy person. He was part simian, or part that you call the Bigfoot, right? Sasquatch being, who was also mixing in under Enkidu, who was of the Anunnaki. They were all breeding and experimenting on the planet in we call the Arab Kuwait in Saudi Arabia, right? Where they would come to this planet and breed all kinds of non-human hybrids. This is why in the lecture, I think lecture 15, right, where we talked about the creatures of the book, this is why you have so many various creatures in the Bible, and no one seems to know why. Why do you have centaurs? Why do you have goatmen? Why you have the lion men? Why do you have Leviathan, dragons, right? You have unicorns, all of these species you have. And then when you look at Mesopotamia, where these Anunnaki had dwelled, they built certain cities there, right? And then Nimrod goes into there and builds his own in the Tower of Babel. That's Mesopotamia. When you look on the Mesopotamian walls, you'll see all types of creatures. You'll see the serpent creature there have 4 legs, right? 4 legs, right? Walking on all 4s. You have the bull man is there. Why is it half man, half bull? Because they were breeding hybrids. They were geneticists. So they were aware of how to, they're hundreds of thousands of years more advanced than human beings. So they were altering genetics then. And a lot of these creatures had escaped from the laboratories. Some went into caverns, right? Then you had extraterrestrial, other species coming to the planet, mixing in, right? But the Garden of the African race seed was to remain pure. From our descendants, our Nathard, our ancestors, right? Our Nathard who didn't want none of them touching the black race. But some of them were mixing and raping. The Canaanites were mixing and raping the African seed. And so that's why some people are like, well, I thought they were black. I thought they were this. And when you see the father, people say, well, the father mentioned the Ishmaelites. Well, the Ishmaelites are because he was of the African seed, they were protected. And Kedar comes out of the Ishmaelites, where their prophet Muhammad comes out of, the prophet Muhammad's descendants come out of, right? Because that Anunnaki seed from Ishmael, right, who was the son of Abraham and the son of Hagar, because Abraham was of the Anunnaki bloodline as well. From that descendancy, that Anunnaki seed mixed in with the African seed through Hagar. And Ishmael was born as a mixed seed. He was born an Arab. He was the first Arab, which literally means mixed. And so this is how the Mesopotamian doctrine, or the Anunnaki doctrine, came into Africa, because in the protection of this African bloodline, right? They had to separate the seed. This is why Judah went south, and Solomon, who was of the Canaanite seed from the Hittite wife of David, moved into the northern area of Judea and set up the kingdoms of Solomon. And Adonijah and Judea, or the Judeans, was in the southern area, where the black seed went down and became the Mahdiya seed into Sudan, into Ethiopia, into Africa. So yes, there was two bloodlines that was taking place. The Anunnaki's seed from Israelites who were of the cherubim, they chose the Israelites, or they chose Isaac and Esau's descendants, right? As you see down, right? Let's go to Genesis. When you look at the bloodlines of, let's look at the bloodlines of Abraham. Abraham's descendants through Hagar, Ishmael. Genesis 16:15, you'll see Ishmael, who had a son named Nebajoth, right? And then he had a son, Kedar. Kedar is the black seed that was protected, right? The reason they had to be protected because they were of the pure bloodline. They had to try to protect the black seeds out that were scattered amongst the raping of the Canaanites. The Canaanites were ravishing that entire area. And that's why Abraham said, don't go mix your seed with the Canaanites. He told his servant to make sure his son didn't mix in with them. Abraham said, don't mix your seed with the Canaanites. Why? Because they were of the cursed seed, right? And so they kept their seed pure by mixing in with the African bloodlines. Abraham, or Ishmael, mixed in with the African bloodline. You'll find that in Genesis 21:21. His mother chose him, an African woman, to keep the seed pure, right? So you had Hagar, Ishmael, whose his son was Mitsam, coming after Abdel. Then you had Duma. Then you had Massa, which was one of his sons, Hadar, Tema, Nephish, right? Then you have Kedemah, and his daughter was Beshemath. Now, the Beshemath married Jacob. Jacob had a wife, right? Pardon me. Yeah, Jacob, who was the son of Isaac, married Ishmael's daughter and had a son and children by her. And because she had the protected Beshemath, or Besemath, right? Mahalath, he's known as. You see that in one of the 6 points of the religious symbol, because she was of the black seed, because of the mitochondria, right? And because Ishmael's mother gave him a wife from Africa, she had the black seed, the Beshemites. That's why you see that Genesis 36:3. That's where that's one of the seeds there. Also out of that, you had Judah coming out of Jacob from his 4 wives, right? Reuben, Simeon, Levi. Judah was the 4th seed out of that. And Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Sher, Joseph, Benjamin, and the daughter Dinah. The daughter Dinah's seed was protected as well. So in the genetics, they were looking for and maintaining the purity of the black seed, because the cursed seed of the Canaanites was mixing in. When you see Genesis 9:25, cursed be Canaan, the Canaanites' bloodline. Canaan was the 4th son of Ham. From his bloodline, Canaan, came the Sidonites, came the Hethites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgazites, the Hivites, the Archites, the Arvadites, the Zemarites, and the Hamathites came out of that from that seed as well. That was the cursed bloodline. Now, not all of Ham's seeds was cursed, because as you see, the first son of Ham was, Mitzrayim was one of his sons. Then you have Ham, Shem, and Japheth. But the first son of Ham was who? Cush, right? And you'll see that in Genesis 17. He was of the black seed, because the mother of Ham, right? Ham, Shem, and Japheth, right? The mother of Ham from Noah, she was of the black seed, but Noah was of the Anunnaki seed. He was actually a shapeshifter. So the black seed came out of Noah's descendants through the mother, not through Noah. So Ham's seed, when you see which Nimrod came out of, Nimrod which is coming from Ham, he was tying into Inki's, the Seraphim, Inki's bloodline, right? Because they were married into the African seed. Remember, I told you, the father explained that Inki, right, or Nundamud married a African and gave birth to Ningizida, who was known as Marduk, or Marduk and Melchizedek. And in Genesis 14:19, you'll see Melchizedek there. But the black seed comes out of this bloodline of the Kushites. Now, Kush he was 2/3, he was also an Anunnaki as well, but the black seed was in his genetics through Enki, right? The black seed of Enki was in this seed of Nimrod, who became, he was speaking the Patan, his own language, and he and his people went into the land of Mesopotamia, and Enlil's side, right, who was warring with Enki's side, didn't recognize the Nimrod and his descendants. That's why they didn't understand the language they were speaking, because Nimrod brought the African tongue out of Ethiopia into Mesopotamia. And this in Genesis 10, you'll see that Enlil, Nanar, all of his descendants said, let us go down there to see what they're doing, because this was not they were not under his control. The Nimrod and his descendants were not speaking the language that Enlilites or that they could understand. That's why they said if they were unified in their language, and if they began to do whatever they decided to do, and their imagination, the unity that they had will give them the ability to build whatever edifice that they desired. And this angered Enlil and his descendants. That's why they came down and said, if we don't stop this particular seed, there will be problems. Why did they have a problem with this African seed? Because this was of the Seraphim side. This was of Enki side. This was the Kushites, the Ethiopians. These were the Eritreans and the Yemenis. And they seeded this particular land in Africa, all throughout southern Arabia, where the land of the Sabaeans, into Djibouti, into Ethiopia. This is that dark Kushite, dark seed that was being protected. The Anunnaki seed was being protected as well, but it wasn't being protected by our ancestors. Their seeds were being protected by their bloodline, right? But even though they had to destroy and kill most of the Adamites because of their evil, wicked behavior, and them violating, raping, and having children by them, their wickedness and their evil, they had to destroy them through the flood. Most people, again, think the flood waters come from the heavens, when it didn't. It came from, it bust asunder from the bottom. There was, water that came from beneath the earth that caused the flood, not necessarily the heavens. And we'll cover that. But this is where I'm going back to Nimrod. The Enlilites had lost control over this particular bloodline. Kushites, Nimrod, the son of Ham. I hope I'm clear, right? Am I clear? Let me some of the questions. Am I clear? Are y'all following? Are y'all? I don't want it, because it's a lot of information, right? And I don't want, the father puts the publications in various books, and so in order to lecture, in order to properly disseminate it, I don't want to sound like I'm all over the place, right? And so I'm trying to give you a general understanding of the genes that was taking place within these Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, but more so the Genesis story. I'm clear? Okay. So, right. So these 6 genes that the Anunnaki seed, let's address them. You have one, the Adamites, the Adamu, right? Then you have the Cainites. This was another seed. These are the genes of the Enlilites, these are the ones that raped and came down and violated having sex with this new creation. 3, the Sethites or Sati. His name was also Azoru. Cain's name was Awan in the ancient text. You have the biblical text, Cain, Canaan, but you have the ancient text they were in, or older text called Awan. Then you had Enosh or Enshi, who was Noam, not Noah, Noam. Then you had Noah's seed. His name was Zuesudra or Zahra, also known as Utnapishtim. You'll find him in those tablets, right? Then you have Jacob's or Yaqub, Leah, Bilhah, Zilpah, and Rachel from that bloodline. And so from them were born many tribes. This is how that tribe, these Adamites, the tribes spread abroad from these main 6. The Cainites, the Adamites, the Sethites, they had seeds. The Cainites, Cain found a wife in the land of Nod. So they were mixing all over, but they weren't African seeds. This Adamite seed was not the African race. They started raping the tribes because we were all over. That's why some people like, well, weren't they black? Yes, they were black seeds present. The black African seed was not supposed to mix in, but they were being raped. A lot of the feminine were being raped by the Canaanites because the disease that they had, they were trying to prevent hemophilia or the continuous bleeding. So they needed the plasma and the melanin from the African seed, so they would just rape them. And so now you have Canaanite seed inside of the African seed. So how do you protect the African seed? This is where the father began to explain that it was Marduk and his sons, Enki and his sons, that began to protect the African bloodline. Not only that, let's go back, right? Let's go back a little bit so we can find out who was all involved in the Anunnaki's descendancy. Now, the sexual intercourse it wasn't just Nanar, it was also Ninhurta, and Ninhurta, which is one of the sons of Enlil. I'm just giving you the names of the Enlilites. Ninhurta became Adonai. Now, anytime you find the word Adonai in the Old Testament, you know it's Ninhurta. That's why in the book of Genesis 18, when Abraham had met this being at the plains of Mamre, and they came and sat under a tree, it was 3 beings there, and then one of their name was Adonai. That was Ninhurta. Then you have Nanar, who became El Shaddai. When everybody say, I worship, our God is El Shaddai. That's just one of the deities, one of these Anunnaki, depending on how you say it. Nanar is El Shaddai. That's a demon deity. Literally, the word Shad means demon. They know Nanar was the demon, the god of light and fire. He was the one that would bring the fire down. He was the one that set fire down on Sodom and Gomorrah. He was the one that spoke from the burning bush through the fire. He was the one that asks for sacrifice on top of the fire, right? So this is Nanar. His temple is in Chaldees, right? Ur of Chaldea, the land of fire deities. You'll find Nanar there. And his mother is Ninlil. Ninlil, right? She had a son, Ishkor, and Ishkor's consort was Ningal. So people was asking, well, who are the women of the Anunnaki? These are the women. One of the women, Ninlil, who was the mother of Nanar, right? And Ishkor, she had a son named Ishkor. You'll find that in the Sumerian text. Ishkor's consort, his wife was Ningal. Now, Nanar had a wife, right? Nanar's wife, Ningal, Ningal, the same person, daughter, right? They had a daughter named Inanna. This is Ishtar. You see Ishtar, the gates of Ishtar, right? In Mesopotamia, Ishtar is the son of Nanar. Nanar is El Shaddai of the Genesis. And she's in the biblical text too under the word Asherah. You don't see her name. You see Ishtar, but you also see Tammuz. Tammuz is the son of Inanna and the son of Nanar. Pardon me. That's incorrect. Inanna's son is Tammuz from Damuzi. That's clear. Damuzi is the father of Tammuz. Ishtar or Inanna is the mother of Tammuz. Dumuzi is the son of Enlil. Nanar or Inanna is the daughter of Nanar. So Enlil's seed, all right, Enki's seed came together down the line from Dumuzi and Ishtar and gave birth to Tammuz. This is their Christ. This is one of their Christ. This is the Christ of their religion. He's the one that's the spoken of in Ezekiel, I think 14, Ezekiel 14, where you'll see his name. Let's pull up his name here, right? And you'll see it in let's find it. Tammuz, which is Ezekiel's 8. Pardon me, I said 14. It's 8:14. You'll find Tammuz's name in the book. It says, "Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house." 8:14. Let's see what this Lord's Yahweh, right? Jehovah, who's actually of the Enlilites. They were both called Yahweh, but Jehovah is more so synonymous with the Enlil side or the cherubim side. So much to learn. Yes, I'll be redundant if something I need to repeat. Then let me know. I don't have a problem with repeating, but I needed to get it all condensed because 1,500 books. It's almost impossible to read all of this information in your lifetime. You need several lifetimes to digest what the Father has given us. But it's our job, that's actual facts, to do our best to try to condense it to where, yes, I shared the book name in the beginning, and I'll go back over it before for those that are tuning in. So let me finish this Tammuz story. It says, not story, but verse. It says, "Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was toward the north, and behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz." This Tammuz is the son, from the son of Inanna, which is Ishtar, and the son of Enlil. Okay. The son of Enki is Dumuzi. The son of Enlil is Nanar. They both, the daughter and from both sides gave birth, from Ishtar gave birth to Tammuz. Let me make sure I'm clear on that. I'm gonna repeat this again so we can be clear. Enlil, Enki is known as El or Yahweh, right? Enlil is known as Baal and also Yahweh. Enki's son is Marduk. One of his sons is Marduk. Another one of his sons is Nergal. Enlil's son is Ninherta. Another one of his sons is Nanar, right? Nanar's consort was Ningal. They had a daughter named Inanna and a son named Utu, Shemesh. They gave birth to Tammuz. Dumuzi was the father of Tammuz. He was the son of Enki. Inanna, as the daughter of Nanar, the son of Enlil, Ishtar gave birth to Tammuz with Dumuzi. So Tammuz's mother and father was Dumuzi and Ishtar. That's who their Christ is. Now, Anu also had a daughter who's the most high of these beings, right? Anu had a daughter named Ninhursag, right, or also known as Nimma. She was responsible for the breeding, and her brother Enlil gave birth to Ninherta, which is Adonijah. So the consort of Ninherta, who was Baal or Gula. So this is the family of these beings, and I hope that's clear. I'll have to do a part 2 to make that more detailed, so we can go down each bloodline. But right now we're showing that they were having sexual intercourse, and in having sexual intercourse, they introduced their seed to these Adamites, and through these 6 bloodlines of the Anunnaki, or their creation. Yes, one of their name is Yahweh. Yahweh, this is for the Hebrew Israelites and the other people who have the Hebrew doctrine. Yahweh means the living one. A lot of people under the interpretation that Yahweh is a title, pardon me, a name. Yes, it's a name. It became a name, but it's a title of a living being. It's not a name exclusive. It's not an exclusive name. Religion has you get, yes. When you read the Genesis book and you see the word Yahweh, they will make you think it's a one character. When you have a group of Elohim, this is a Yahweh, that being is a Yahweh, Anu is a Yahweh, you are a Yahweh, Paa Nabab Yaanuwn is a Yahweh. He's a living entity or living being, incarnated. The translators or the text writers did not have the names of these beings. They only had the titles of these beings. That's why you said Adonai, which is Lord, is translated Lord, and Yahweh is also translated as Lord. You see that, El Razak? When you see Lord in Genesis 18, let's look it up. You'll see this, Genesis 18, right? It says, and the Lord, right? Let's go down to my Lord. You see Lord and you see my Lord there. You'll see why is it interchangeable? Because these are different characters. And they can't write. They didn't write in the text. And Enki said this. Enlil said that. Ninhurta said this. Nergal said that. Talmud said they didn't do that. They would just say, and the Lord said this. And the Lord said that. And when there was a group of them, they would say, and the Elohim did this. They didn't make a distinction between what's the name of each one of those beings. So because you are, right, Yahweh, right, it means alive from the word Yahweh or Yahaya or Haya, meaning living. Yahayu, Yahweh, or oh he who is. They would say, oh he who is. Oh he who is what? In Exodus 3:14, when Moses say, who should I say sent me? Say, I am that I am sent me. Right? When you say I am that I am, you're saying the living one. Oh, he who he is sent me. So it went from I am who I am to go tell them I am who I am. So you wouldn't go say, Moses didn't go say, I am who I am sent me. He said, oh, he who he is sent me. Right? So Yahweh, the word, someone said, is it good or bad? It depends. The Father explains, it depends on what you're doing and who you're involved with. Like I said before, you can be a righteous person, but be a devil to a chicken, the devil to a cow, because you're killing a cow for food. They don't look at you as righteous and upright as you claim, right? A person that has to defend their nation, if you're attacking, then you may be good to other people, but a devil to someone. So it depends on the event. It depends on who you are, what you're doing, and how you are involved with the species that is making the distinction. You're good, you're bad. That's the trick, right? Revelations 3:14, the Amen, the faithful, and the true witness, the beginning of the creation of God. Yes. So so we covered, I don't want to get too far, and then definitely want to answer the questions, right? So when the Father speaks about the bloodline, so the bloodlines of the African race, I named three for you, right? We named the Beshemites, which you'll find in Genesis 36:3. That seed went into Africa along with Ishmael's seed, Kedarites, moving into Africa, black skin seed. Jeremiah 8:21, you'll see Ishmael, and then you'll see Judah. I am, right? Kedar, the tribe of Judah, black skin. They went into Africa as well to protect their seed, removing themselves from the mixed bloodlines of the other brothers even of Jacob, of the Enkiduites and Jacobites, Jacob and Esau. Jacob was a feminine woman. Not woman, but he had feminine tendencies. He was a feminine, masculine woman, male, because of his genetics. I'm not saying he was a female. I'm saying he had a feminine nature because he often stayed in the tents and was a housekeeper. This is why his mother favored him. But Esau was, because he had the shaggy bloodline and he was hairy and he was a hunter, right? He was favored from that particular seed of the Enkiduites or the Anunnaki who came out in the genetics. You have to remember that Abraham was aware of the genes of these beings and the descendancy, and they were aware of the genealogy. And these Anunnaki were separating the seeds. That's why they say, if you have of this seed, come here. If you have that seed, go there. If you have the Canaanites, you will be quarantined. If you have the black seed, you would keep the bloodline down by father to son, and they married into the Africans and protected the seed all the way down to Muhammad. So that was a Anunnaki seed of their records, not your records. These are not your records. And that's the confusion, because you keep tying yourself into the biblical text as all of these individuals, all of these tribes are you, and that's not the case. Okay, so any questions? Okay, so we have some trolls in here. Where are Enki, Enlil, and Anu now? Do they still exist? Yes, they still exist. Right? Nanar came back and he took his sacrifice. Right? When Nanar came back, hold on 1 second, please. Let me get, okay. Nanar came back and gathered 144,000 he offered up to his father. This was the rapture of the harvest of the Caucasoid seed. Because remember, they were bred for food. So what the Father has taken us into the realm of how these extraterrestrials think, how these bloodlines intermingle with human beings, the variations of the species, who you are and who you're not. So you're not of the Adamite seed, you're not of the Sethites, you're not of the Canaanites, you're not of the Cainites, you're not of the even Noah's descendants. Only one of the seed out of Noah through Ham do you come out of? And that's because they went into Ethiopia and mixed in with descendants of the Sands tribes already in Africa. Now, we can't forget Mizraim, which was the second son of Ham. There was a black seed that came out of that as well. They returned westward. They were migrating, but they returned westward. I'm talking about the Mizraimites. They went and from Mizraim took a wife from Africa again. So anytime you find the black seed protected, is because one of the Adamite seed from that bloodline married an African. Mizraim married an African woman, right, and gave birth to Ludim, Anamim. You'll find that in Genesis 10:13. Lahabim, Nephtuhim. Nephtuhim is related to Ishmael. Why? Because Ishmael married an African seed, and he married the same seed that Mitzrayim married. They were all marrying, not all, most of the tribes that were protected were marrying the African bloodline. Out of the Lahabim, out of Mitzrayim came Lahabim, Nephtuhim, from the word Fatah, which is the Egyptian deity, the opener, our great father. And then you have Pathrusim. Pathrusim and Kasluhim. Kasluhim is this African seed. These are the Minoans. This is in the actual facts. The father is mentioned in this bloodline. So even though it sounds like, where's this information coming from? It's coming from the actual facts, where he mentions the black seeds that are protected. So the Caphtorim, or the Minoans, they became the Philistines. These are the Kasluhim who became the Philistines and became the Caphtorim and the Minoans. These are Minoans, are the black seed. So the Minoans from Mizraim is a black seed, right? The Kushites out of Ethiopia, Genesis 10:7. From Ham is another black seed. Then you have out of Hagar's seed from Ishmael is Kedar, which was a black seed, African seed. Then you have out of Beshemath or Besemath, Genesis 36:3, that was a black seed as well. And from Ruel, who was the son of Besemath, came the Amalekites. That was another black seed. So the Amalekites, the Kedarites, right? The Beshemites, the Dinaites, the Sabaeans out of Sheba from Rahma, who gave birth to Sheba. Cush was a black seed, but he was part Anunnaki. Then you have out of the Mitzrayim seed, I'm just rehashing it, the Kephtorim, who came out of Kesluhim. Kesluhim was the sixth son of Mitzrayim, coming from an African seed as well. You have to do intense study in order to understand the tribes and bring, so you can have a complete understanding of the biblical text. They're not going to teach you this in religious doctrine because they don't have the actual facts that Dr. Malachi Z York is presenting to the world. So they can't give you clarity on who these descendants are. Now, the chosen seed, okay, so we found the black seed, but who is the chosen seed of the Anunnaki? The Anunnaki seed that's protected from their bloodline, not yours, the African seed. You may have Anunnaki in there. You do, because that's how it mixed in. They came into Africa. They brought the seed in. So this is where it became a new tribe of Nubians, Nuwapians, which you are. So I'm not saying you don't have Anunnaki bloodline. You do. You do have Anunnaki bloodline. You do have bloodline of the Inkyites. You do have bloodline of the tribes of Marduk as well. He had seed as well. He had descendants as well. A lot of them had hundreds of children. They were breeders. Some of them were breeders. They didn't have the ritualistic religious doctrines of one man, one woman type of doctrine. They don't have that. It depends on where they come from. They have their own laws and their own bloodline, right? So, like the Igigi. Okay. So what happens is the Anunnaki bloodline that was protected, they're known as Shemyaza. They were the Shemites. That's why they say, oh, we're from the Semites. We're Semites. This is the seed of Nanar, the son of Noah, Noach, to Arphaxad, to Selha, to Eber, to Peleg, to what? To Reu or Reu, to Serug, to Nahor, to Tirhu, to Ibrahim or Abraham. This is the Semitic seed. This is the Anunnaki seed that was protected. That's why so much focus on Abraham. When you look at Abraham, because he was of the Anunnaki bloodline and protected of that bloodline, right? That descendancy mixed in with the African seed. And so this is why the combination is there. So what the problem is the disease blood of the Anunnaki from their descendants mixing in with the Adamites, which was forbidden, caused the confusion because the Adamites became wicked and evil because of the mixing. And that's what they did not want into the Anunnaki or the descendants of the African race. They were trying to keep it out of the African race. So Abraham was aware of this genetic concern. And this is why these beings came to him to help him mix in with Sarah, who was them two, they couldn't copulate. That's why they said she was barren. She was only barren because the genetics of Abraham. Not that she was barren from having children. They were just not compatible. So they had to do a genetic alteration on Sarah in order for her to receive the seed of Abraham. It was Hagar didn't have a problem with mixing in with Abraham. It was Sarah because she was 2/3, she was part Anunnaki. And sometimes in the genetics or the copulating part, the genes have foreign genes that they're not compatible because of the gene structure. And that's why alterations have to be done. Even alterations had to be done with our father, His Excellency, Dr. Malachi Z. York, when he was born, in order to take in the whole light being of the incarnated being that would be able to teach through him. And alterations had to be done through our grandmother, right, Fatima, in order for her to receive the combination of the Anunnaki and the Nathar. This is a project of combining the seed for this great deity, God in flesh, His Excellency, Dr. Malachi Z. York. And this is why he says he speaks as Ningizida, as a part of the Anunnaki, and he speaks also as Tehutwi, right, who was the descendant of Panatharu through Reye and Reyetet. So you have two seeds there, Anunnaki, Panatharu, overseers, and those sent from Anu. That combination, these two species, this is the main species that you're going to be dealing with in the actual facts in this doctrine, because it relates directly to you. Because in our mixture as a nation, as a tribe, as a race, those descendants migrated into Africa. And that's why you have various textures of hair in East Africa, because the Anunnaki blood is there, the African seed is there, but the pure African seed was protected amongst the Falashans and the Hadendawa and the Mahdi seed that Al-Mahdi Muhammad Ahmed came out of, the expected one of the East, and the Al-Mahdi, right, As-Sayyid Al-Imam Isa Al-Hadi Al-Mahdi from the Hadendawa Falashan bloodline of the West, coming out of, right, raised in the West, known as Dr. Malachi Z. York, being of the Al-Mahdi seed, that pure seed as well. So the combination is there. Now, this is why our nation, Nuwapian, we're known as the Nuwapian Nation, because you are a new being. You're a combination of these bloodlines, and because you migrated west and were brought to, a lot of you were brought to, migrated west through migrations, as well as moving west through being brought west through the slave trade, and you mixed in within the southeastern area with the indigenous Africans, the Anasazi there. So now you have a combination of this new race, of new group of Sabaeans, which was from as a Musbatu, right? As a speaking Sabatia, right? Because of the southern Yemen area where Queen of Sheba settled, from that particular bloodline, as you read from the Ham's descendants from Kush, right, settling in the southeastern area down in the southern tip, right, crossing the Red Sea, coming into Africa, that bloodline of the Sands moving up north into East Africa from Botswana, where the original seed of the Africans were, migrated north. The seed of the Anunnaki through Abraham, Ishmael, comes into southern Arabia, comes into Ethiopia, comes into Kush. Ishmael's descendants and his sons mix in the Sudan as well through Kedar and his bloodline. The Habilites, the Sabtites, Rama gives birth to, has a daughter named Sheba, and then these descendants begin to speak the Egyptian Napatan tongue. This is the frequency that you were on amongst your own, in tune with your own Nathar, and in tune with Enki and his descendants, because they were of the mixing in with the African race. Nimrod wanted to speak to that seed, not the Enlilite seed, and that's why these beings came and tried to dismantle the unity that the African seed had. Because Enlil, Nanar, and his son Ninurta, when they came and saw the unification and Nimrod building an obelisk, the Tower of Babel, as they say, that he learned from Egypt, which was a communication device. This communication device, which is the obelisk that was literally a radio antenna, connects to the heavens, and it allows you to communicate directly to the heavens. This is why you see an obelisk. Anytime an obelisk is erected, it's typically in a capital city. We discussed this before. This capital city is the symbol of sovereignty, because it says you are in contact with your authority. You are in contact with your heavenly deities. You are in contact with your gods. You are in contact. You receive information only, or directions or laws only from your God. And the whole world copied this practice of taking obelisks. That's why they moved the obelisk from Egypt. One huge obelisk went to Italy, some went to France. They were taking it because they thought they would be able to communicate with our deities, our overlords, the great ancestral abode, but they couldn't. This is why they have the Washington, D.C. monument. They were in contact with their overlords, their Pleiadian beings. Why did we forget this knowledge when we incarnate, right? Baba reminded of our, is that a question? Okay, yeah, this is a question. So we will remember everything again. Okay. There was a question. Okay, let me look at the questions real quick. I don't want to miss the questions because you ask questions and they tie into the discussion. So Rahubat, okay, Rahubat, you all again. Okay, thank you. I appreciate you. It says, so will we remember everything again and communicate? You will if you're chosen. You have to raise yourself up. The question is, so will we remember everything again and communicate with telepathy, with Paa Nabab? Oh, Paa Nabab, you can communicate with Paa Nabab now. Your job is to connect with them now. The application of the chants aligns your DNA, aligns your genetics, so you can become a radio receiver. Your body is designed to receive radio frequencies and other frequencies transmitted through etheric channels from the etheric abode. And the reason, right, the reason that oftentimes we are not making the connection is because the Enlilites and his evil descendants that are responsible for creating the cage of every foul spirit and unclean bird, which is in the book of Revelation spoken of in the land of Babylon, is to distract you from communicating with your ancestors and your deities so you can get guidance. Sometimes some of us are able to break through and get the guidance, and we're guided to a specific place, we're guided to specific people, we're guided to do a specific task. Others, it's very difficult because your emotional connection to other human beings and places, places, and things has created an attachment that you cannot sever on your own. You need assistance in severing what you think you are supposed to be attached to. You're not supposed to be attached to every person, place, and thing that you come in contact with in your life. You do that because it makes you feel important. It makes you feel like you have a purpose, and you attach yourself to things and people and places that have no relevancy for your spiritual development. And so you have to have assistance. Sometimes it takes catastrophes or issues or in your life that severs you from people, and you think it's a punishment, and it's actually a blessing, right? So what you have to do is continuously chant and get on a frequency to know the real you, and eliminate the voices and other suggestions and beings that you hear. You have to identify what being is speaking. What if it's an ancestor that's maybe speaking through you that's not necessarily there for your better development. Some of them want to take your body and use your body for their own personal desires, because you are connected to them through your 30 personalities from both your parents, your father's mother and father, your mother's mother and father, your mother's mother, mother and father, your mother's father, mother and father, your father's mother, mother and father, your father's father, mother and father, and it goes back. And because all of the genetic combines and makes you are a receiver because you connect to them genetically, and in your genes is crystals, and in your DNA, they can still communicate with, these are their inner voices, right? This is the reason why a lot of people go insane and they have different mood swings. One day they're feeling some kind of way about the person, the next day they love the person, the next day they don't like the person, because you're different beings in your that speak, come through you, through your genetics, through your actions, are affected by outside forces, and it affects you and it changes your mood because you're not sure what ancestor is there. What dominates? Some of your ancestors dominate your body because you feed that particular ancestor the food that they like, or you listen to the music that they like to listen to, or you behave in the activities that they like to entertain. You are involved with. So this is why it's very difficult to communicate directly to Nathard and make the connection, but you have to fight through it. That's why all of us have to fight through it. All of us have to maintain a connection, maintain your chants. The Father says chant 9, 3, and 9. Email me for the chants. If you want the chants, right? The Ranam Act, where you can speak and you speak the tones, your tones, it will create a frequency that connects you directly to them. They're waiting to hear from you. And so you will be able to communicate with them telepathically. They do speak to you telepathically. When you say Nathard, or overseer, some of the closest relative that has passed, your great-grandmother, your grandmother, they may have been welcomed into the etheric abode by your ancestors, and they're there still communicating with you. But because a religious doctrine teaches you, oh, they're dead, they went on in the afterlife, there's no connection to them, right? Religious teaches you're not supposed to communicate with your ancestors because they're dead, yet they want you to speak to 6 ether negative forces of a being called Jesus. They want you to pray to this being or acknowledge Moses and all of these individuals. They want you to acknowledge other races or other people's bloodlines and acknowledge them and their greatness, acknowledge them and their accomplishments, so-called, right? With no proof, no DNA, no evidence, no archaeological evidence, no paleology evidence, nothing that substantiates their existence. They want you to communicate with beings who are fairies, who are spirits, who are ghosts, right? Or let's say ghost fog, which is a haze, it dissipates. Ghosts dissipate, fogs dissipate, it disappears, right? They're okay with you communicating with them, but they don't want you to communicate with their flesh and blood deities, because in that is power. So yes, you will be able to communicate with Paa Nabab, your ancestors, in this lifetime before you die. That's the key. Make a connection before you die, and then you'll have your guidance while you are alive. I hope that's clear with the question. Okay, why is it that some of the African race are able to internalize this information, but some are ignorant towards it? Does that have anything to do with spirit or genetics? Also, yes, it has to do with the teachings as well. Even when people are we all have to be careful with teaching this actual facts, because some people go off and they start making up things that is not found in the Father's publications. They don't find it in the books. They begin to ad-lib because they're too lazy to study. They don't want to quote him verbatim. They don't want to give the reference to the books that he wrote, right? And then they begin to take a position that they're coming up with this information. So sometimes people have their own agendas, and it's not something that they intentionally start off with. They may start off intentionally wanting to be a student of the Father. And then because they get the attention, or they get a few likes and they get a few views, they veer off from the books that's right in front of them and start making up things and pulling from other people and other authors and things of that nature. That's not what we do here. And that's why I keep a strict method in making reference to what the Father writes. I don't have this information. I didn't write this information. I don't speak things that I don't find within the Father's books. I don't need confirmation from other authors, because when you say this person is authenticating what the Father's put out, then you're saying that they have more knowledge than who the Heavenly Father is in flesh. And you're taking away from you can't take away from who he is, but you're giving authenticity to another mortal. And this doctrine is not coming from a mortal being. This is not coming from a human being who just wants to sound deep or wants to sound heavy. This is a divine mission that our ancestors brought, and our Heavenly Father sent him down here. He incarnated in flesh to raise you up for this cycle of the next 24,000 years, so that you will be prepared and able to teach in the future generations that are to come, because the devil's knowledge with so-called technology and what he has introduced to you, his mythologies, his history, his lies, his deception, his made-up stories of beings that he describes in his image and after his likeness, that will go out the door. It's dying. And so now you have to prepare for your transformation. In this transformation, you have to fill your vessel with the actual facts or the patara. So that's why we stick to that code and we call it the Actual Facts Podcast. No one uses actual facts. The actual facts is written right by the Father here. This is one of the main book that we're coming out of. Pahakeyu, as you can see, is the actual facts. This book is 400, actually 500, close to 500 verses, 473 verses there. Then you have Good and Evil. This is number 31. Those that are right, you'll see that there. This is a publication that is available. Email me. You'll see the email in the description box, right? You have to, if you want the chance, email me, look in the description, you'll see, and I'll give them to you. All of you should have the chance by now if you're tuning in. Designer Genes. This speaks about the genetic breeding that was taking place, right? Because in the Genesis story, they don't tell you about the details and the genetic process that was taking place. These beings were breeding all kinds of beings, but the Adamite, this new creation, was the first one that was able to reproduce on its own that they bred. They were literally having competitions on the type of species. Extraterrestrials are having these types of, this is how they entertain themselves. I'm telling you this because the Father explains that when these species from these other worlds, they have entertainment as well. They're not in the religious concept mind that you create. They have holographic TV. They have entertainment, competition where they were bringing in various species from different places or different laboratories and bringing them to Saudi Arabia and in the what you call Middle East and Kuwait, and they were watching what types of breeds were being done, what success was being, the success of the breedings. The Adamite breed, they were not successful the very first time. They had many deformities that was taking place. Beings was born with 4 arms, 3 legs connected at the head. Some of them couldn't walk correctly. Some of them couldn't speak. Some of them couldn't have sex. They had to be a genetic engineering to give them the ability to actually have sex with another species from a genetic breeding. Natural nature has designed beings to copulate. Natural nature has the genetic, our ancestors who are in control of natural nature have that ability. But when you're breeding something unnatural, that's the difference. When you're bringing something that is a creation in an unnatural cycle, you have unnatural nature and then you have natural nature. Unnatural nature are things that are brought about from species creations. The Adamite was an unnatural creation, and therefore they were born in the moon cycle. The older cycle which was an unnatural cycle. This sun cycle is a natural cycle, so things are going back to natural nature. And the unnatural cycle is the 6,000 years prior to this one. In that 6,000 year period, all kinds of beings were being bred. They were evil. A lot of them were deceptive. A lot of them were bloodthirsty. And then that's what you see on the planet. This is why you have so many diseases in the blood, so many deformities amongst human beings. The question that the Father introduced and whose God is responsible when he was waking us up to this affirmation, he was saying, well, if your God is responsible for the creation of Adam and Eve and the birth of creation of human beings, whose God is responsible? And you thank the God that does that. You thank God, this God, for the birth of beautiful babies. You thank this being for the birth of the trees and the air and etc. Right? Not birth. Trees don't give birth. They seed. I don't know if they. No, birth is for mammals, right? So you thank this being, whatever creation you thank this being. So he says, so what about the deformities? Is this same God responsible for the deformities? What about Siamese twins? If your God grows the baby in the womb and you say, thank Allah, Allahu Akbar, subhanallah, appreciate, you thank this being for giving birth, growing the baby in the womb. But what if the baby comes out connected at the shoulder, right? Some babies are born. Some babies share even digestive systems. They share nervous systems. These are Siamese twins. Some are born hydrocephalic with huge heads, right? I forgot the other term for the smaller heads, but I'm not making fun of these. What I'm saying is that these are in creation. How did they get there? Now, in the hereafter doctrine, the fathers explaining that these beings who were responsible for breeding this Adamite also in the genetic process, which took hundreds of years to perfect, also created these deformities. And some of these deformities still are in the genes of many human beings around the planet. And that's how it got there. So it's not about just having overstanding of this basic biblical text. The Father, when you deal with these actual facts, you have to go, he goes into detail. Because why? Because he is one of those beings. He is an Anunnaki. He is Marduk incarnated. He's Yaanuwn. He is Melchizedek. He's the Tahutwi, thrice times great. This being often shows up in many different times. He's incarnated many times on the planet and many different cultures. And they called him many different names. And he's recorded and he's written most of the knowledge that you see on the planet that most of the cultures pulled from and teach their very own societies. It was Tahuti who was responsible for that. Who is that in flesh? It's Dr. Malachi Z. York, the being that they tried to lock up and shut up for 24 years, right? And he will be free. That's just without a doubt. It's not something that people may say, oh, they can have their whatever. You will see him. He will walk, if you're blessed, he will walk the planet again free, as a free person, as a free man, and he will continue and complete the mission of what he came to complete. That this great falling away that you're seeing right now, where people are lost and not aware of what's going on, it looks like a lot of confusion. The devil is fighting and killing each other. You have to stay out of the way. Let the devil remove himself off the planet. Let him kill himself under different names and different titles, different religions. They're all the same cursed Canaanite seed, the Adamite race, the evil, wicked race of beings who their overlords had deserted. They said, look, wipe them off of the planet, destroy them by any means, get them off of the planet, drown them like they did in Utnapishtim time, give them diseases, give them the Spanish flu, give them the bubonic plague, give them HIV, which didn't work fast enough, give them COVID, give them whatever disease, give them tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, make their reproductive system, it shorten their telomeres are being shortened, where their lifespan is being, they're dying earlier. They need all types of replacement parts, replacement noses, Botox, hip implants, arm implants, skin injections, skin graftings, all types of cancers killing them. They can't produce the same way that they did. All of that because their species is being wiped off the planet. They only had 6,000 years to rule. When they were bred in Genesis, in their dominion, they were only given a certain amount of time. 6,000 years. That's why it says, let them have dominion. And it was the Adamites that began to name everything. That's why when you look in the text and you look in the books, you look in the encyclopedias, you look in the reference scrolls, you look in all these different books, you go online and everything is named by them because they were given that dominion by their gods. That's why it speaks about them. That's not you. You're not of that. You weren't given dominion in that time. Why? Because that was the moon cycle. That was another cycle. Just like you don't feel good in the winter. That's not your season. Is it something that happens? Yes. In existence, in the cycles of existence, you'll see that. You'll see a colder period. The winter period is like, it's gray, it's cold, it's whatever, with the negative feelings, all of the things you feel during the wintertime. It's not the season for you as a melanated being. When the spring comes in, the summertime, then you come alive. Well, this last cycle, which was the moon cycle, which was a winter cycle, was a cycle of the Caucasoid, the Canaanite, right? The Kakasu and his seed. And they went into other people's lands, took their cultures, mixed in, tried to enslave and did all of the atrocities that they did. And their overlords, now they're being judged. So this biblical text, in it, it's about them, their records, you'll see it in Revelations, how the Babylon is being judged, how the system will collapse, how there'll be wars and rumors of wars, how they'll be killing each other, offering up sacrifices to their gods in order to get protection, which they won't get anymore. They're going to kill to try to appease their gods. They like they did in Leviticus, giving up sacrifices, giving up blood and shedding blood across the planet, killing innocent across the planet, bombing people across the planet, destroying the water, destroying the food. They're trying to offer up their beings and humans, animals to their gods, and it's not working. The Muslim world is doing the same thing. They still have the Eid al-Fitr. They are offering up animals, goats, sheep. Look how many animals are being killed through their Eid every year. Millions of animals, hundreds of thousands of goats, hundreds of thousands of cows, hundreds of thousands. Not only just that, human beings, they're eating up all kinds of animals on the planet. And so they have to be removed. Their dominion was up in 1999, September 9th, year 2000. It's over with for them. And that's why everything is on a decline. You, on the other hand, are part of your nation to be a part of what is to resurrect the double resurrection. As you see, the double unctweeds you see on my crown, right? The Father has given us life after life, which means that you have this hereafter doctrine. You understand who their gods are. You understand who yours are. You understand who the African tribes are. And stop looking at the biblical text as a book all about you. And you want to be a part of this religious family, and you want to be a part of Israel and save the covenant and keep the commandments and all of that. That's not your book. Yes, African tribes are in there, as we just discussed. And I hope that's clear when you see that the seeds are there. They were kept protected, but most of them are Canaanite tribes. Most of them are of the seed of Esau, the Edomites. They were raping. Esau's seed was raping and doing the same thing the Canaanites was doing. And they were offering up they were offering up people to their descendants. And these Adamites spread into different areas and introduced their gods to you, and you converted and started worshiping their gods and wanting to be a part of this book and say, whoa, hey, everything goes back to the biblical text. No, it doesn't. Yes, it has historical information, but not your history. But because you're locked in it, the Father teaches in it in order for you to understand the records in the Adamite text and who the bloodline are and how and distinguish them from you, and to know to stay away from the cursed seed, to stay away from the cursed race. Let them kill themselves off, because it's time for their judgment. And if you in the way, you're going to be judged with them. Now, let's get to some of these questions again. Okay, so do you have a Telegram? It's a lot of Telegram channels. Any questions you can put in the chat? I'm taking questions now. We've been rolling for an hour and a half. We told the Greeks to name things. That's the species. Okay. Any questions? Am I clear? Am I being heard? Why is it that okay, so to answer this question, does that mean it does have to do with the genes and the spirit? Some people, the affirmation clicks, right? You hear the affirmation one time and it's like, wow, this is powerful. Some people are more skeptical because they want more affirmation. So it just depends on your birth and your season. Some plants, right, they grow depending on the how well it's nurtured, right? Some trees grow at a specific time, others grow late. They blossom late. So it just depends on the person and who they are. Typically, this resonates with the African bloodline, our people. I'm talking about globally. I'm not just talking about on the continent. I'm saying globally, this resonates with our people. Okay, so any questions? Have you spoken to your, and then, oh, oh, the vote. The vote is still moving forward, right? The father of writing, okay. By 20,000, would there be, by 2013, 2030, will the 5 ether and 6 ether, 7 ether, well, 6 ether, 7, the lower ether, yes, it will disappear. Their doctrine will disappear. They will become weak and eventually fade out. By 2060, the Father said the Adamite seed and his evil race of beings, their descendants will be wiped off the planet. I only say, okay, is that a question for me? So it says, yeah, so 6 ether will be wiped away. 5 ether, yes. 7 ether depends if 7 ether latches or connects to the higher Nagardanatu or Dravadu or Dravidian races. Because these races, the Dravidians, they have a culture, they have a language, because they have a bloodline of beings. They have descendants from the heavens, right? They have their Hindu gods or deities that we respect because they have their place in the multiverse as well. Then as long as they stay connected to them, their culture, they'll continue to exist into this next cycle. Only the cycles that are of the lower abodes that's responsible for, because they don't have a soul, they're not connected to the afterlife or the higher source, so they will dissipate in the lower realms and stay there until they fizzle out. It's like you ever look at a light for a second, and it kind of like imprints itself in your eye, and you look away and you can still see the light in your eye looking somewhere else, and it eventually fades out. That's exactly how that works. They had the blinding light. They blinded you for a certain amount of time. Now that you're looking into the facts, into intellect, into darkness, that light will fade out and you'll have clarity again. So it was the blinding light of 6 ether, 5 ether that kept you under their spell, but it will die out once you connect with these actual facts. They'll heal you from the inside out. Listener from Kenya, Rahubat. Well, 5 ether, 4 ether, 3 ether are Caucasoid men and Caucasoid women. 5 ether, 4 ether, Caucasoid men. And the Caucasoid women, or the Caucasoid women mixing in with other races, brings their genetic code up to ours. It goes into that in dimensional shift, right? But the animals, yes, are on that etheric abode because there are human animals, so they share that same etheric level. 5 ether is 50% ether. 9 ether is 90% ether. When you're 100% ether, the reason why Nagardanatu Africans melanated are 9 ether is because that's the percentage of ether you have. You're 90% ether. Without the body, you become 100% ether. That's when you're a true Etherian or etheric being. What is the original origin creation of our African Black seed human form of the sun? Human form of the sun before all mixing. We were already reproducing within us on our own. Yes, that's in episode, I think 2. I did that's one of the first episodes I did where we were discussing the creation of the Caucasoid race and the creation of the African race. And it's extensive because we cover many books that the Father has written and actual facts and Patarak as it relates to the creation of us, the Sands people, and the genetic markers that we have, and the migrations that took place in Africa, and how the seed was planted in Botswana. It was planted in the waters and planted, and the women came out speaking first, and then the men followed. We evolved onto the water as the seed of the Panatharda was placed here on this planet on Project 24. It's a 24th project, and it's based on the 24 cycles, right? 24 hours in a day, 12 hours, 24 time zones, 24,000 miles, 24,000 chromosomes. So we addressed that in that lecture. Check it out if you can. But the original creation comes in from the Dolphin Project, Dolphin Nomos. Yes, exactly. From the word womb. That was one project. That was one of the ways that the seed was brought to this planet. Yeah. Yes, go back. Yeah, you'll see that there. And so I explained about the sands and how the Father explained that the genetic markers of all races come out of the sands people, except the Caucasoid. And because of that, that's because the Caucasoid seed, their two creations comes from animals of the unnatural creation. The baboon, not baboon. I keep saying baboon. Baboon is a combination of a mammal and a canine, right? Which that's why you see the baboon has the teeth of a canine and the behavior of a canine, and then the body of a mammal. Body of a primate. That was another breeding. But the breeding of the there were several projects, the Dolphin projects, the Adamite project, the Mars project. You had the Rainbow project. I guess we have to do a lecture on the project, so we go over all of the projects. But the project of the Nathar, when this planet, I don't know which episode I spoke on that, but we went into the mathematical layout of the planet Earth and how it's structured from the sixth zone, all right, sixth planet from the sun, the distance it is from the sun as well, and how the planet Earth was structured with 24 chromium, which is the 24th on the periodic table, and how things tie into the 24, and what elders were placed over that planet Earth. 12 elders, 12 male, 12 female, feminine. These were Nathar, and your 24 perfections that the Father speaks about in one of the master secrets. So we went over that. We can go over it again, but I think we'll have a lecture on the projects, because each one of those projects has to be understood in clarity on what their intentions was, right? And why was there a Mars project? Some beings were taken to Mars. There was a laboratory on Mars where they did the genetic cloning and breeding from. They would pick up beings from this planet and take them to Mars. Mars, they're now confirming that Mars did have life, that Mars did have water, even on the other side of the moon. Now they're acknowledging that the other side, there's bases on the moon, and there's life on these planets, right? That's something that the Father's been teaching about for so long. But we'll go through those projects so we can have a clarity on who exactly these what they were referenced to. So I hope that answered your question. Explain exactly what is ether. Okay, I'll get to that question. I wish there was a way to make this font bigger. Okay, where does the reptilian question? Explain what ether. Ether is, you have different types of ether. Okay. Hold on. You have different types of ether. You have ether. Ether is an element. It's an exotic matter that exists in a parallel world that quantum physics or quantum physicists are now being able to understand. Before they didn't understand it. Obviously, the instruments wasn't advanced enough to understand what antimatter is. They still can't really detect antimatter. And because antimatter obviously is very difficult to measure, because by the time you measure it, the measurement by which you think you're measuring it is not where it would be if you were measuring from A to B. By the time you get to B, it had moved to another point, and therefore the time that it would take to measure it is almost cancels itself out. So they use some equations in quantum physics that that guesstimates the location of a particular particle based on experiments using light. And they have the various experiments that they set up. What the Heavenly Father explains about ether is that on the other side of hydrogen, which is the smallest atom, or the smallest particle is an atom, then you have quarks and zeals and biaps and quadrons and hydrons and things of that nature that they're moving into the quantum field. On the other side of that particle is an existence that is undetectable. Some people call it classified as dark matter. We know it as Malchi Z, or exotic matter. The Father explains that our beings exist within that world. Well, this ether is the glue to the multiverse. It's responsible for keeping all matter and thing in existence in fit form. So everything is tangibly connected in some form of fashion. So from this side of helium, hydrogen going this way, you'll see elements, right? Into compounds, into material matter. Excuse me. My sinuses is messing with me, so please forgive me. And then on the other side of hydrogen, or hydrogen, helium, and the elements, the smallest element is an etheric world. So this ether is responsible for feeding the material world. So the material world is a blueprint of what the etheric world represents. So it's parallel worlds, or they call it parallel universes. It's just one is detectable and one is not detectable. One exists as not being under the rules of material law, such as gravity, pushing and pulling, anything that's responsible for the material world being cohesively in order, right? North, south, east, west, centrifugal and centrifugal forces. Ether is not subject to those laws. Ether is an exotic matter that exists, that is infinitesimal in its existence. There's no way to calculate how much ether is or what it is in a way that can be explained in the material world, other than certain mathematical equations and experiments that could possibly bring the logic in the material world or the physical world to overstand something that's invisible. The Father explains that that's one of the most difficult jobs he has, trying to explain to human beings the invisible world, or the immaterial world or etheric world, explaining it in a way that is comprehensible using words that are defined and are limited to person, place, and thing. In other words, in order for you to understand something that's outside of person, place, or thing, how, if you've never been outside of person, place, and thing? If everything that you understand is defined within Webster, how do you explain things that exist outside of the confines of this book? It's very difficult to do. And so this is where your spiritual application and your own communication, your spiritual transformation comes from within. As a spiritual being, then your superconscious can be able to detect and understand the workings of the spiritual etheric world without necessarily having to be able to read it. You'll experience it, which is hopefully, it's kind of like answering the question. All existing gases and non-existing gases. Ether is not necessarily a gas, right? Because gas is matter. So it is all existing gases, but ether on the other side of hydrogen. This is in natural ether energy. These actual facts. The Father takes it to another level. Maybe we'll go through that. What is ether in one of the lectures? These questions will bring out lectures where we can combine the information and then give it to it's some type of carbon. Okay, so question: why do being choosing to come here if the spiritual world is what we are all preparing to go back? Hold on. Well, that's relative. That's not an absolute answer. Why he says, why do we choose to come here? Not everyone chose to come here. Some chose to come here. That's not relevant for all beings. Some beings had to come. Some beings were brought back here. The spiritual you after the physical you dies is a book that explains. You can email requests. I can give you the let you know where you can locate that book. Not everyone chooses to come. Some of us have to live here in order to carry out a specific job or a specific mission, or some have to develop spiritually enough to make it into the spiritual abode. Some people are so physical that they have to live life over and over to burn out desires. So each person is different. Everyone that is blessed, you will have a spiritual master that governs or helps guide your life, but not everyone decides to come. That's something that the Father spoke about, but as the information comes in more and more detailed than these actual facts in Patarak and the hereafter doctrine, he explains that some people are actually have to live over and over and over until they perfect this life. Okay, so we are located. Okay, yeah. So I hope that answered your question. There was another question. So some people are answering the question, but make sure when you answer the questions, you speak from the actual facts. That's important because the Father, we have to advance, and in advancing, you want to be able to elevate your knowledge. Yes, everyone has their stages. We have stages. Some people are reading the actual facts. I mean, the holy tablets, and they're getting affirmation from the holy tablets. Yes, but the Father also said the holy tablets are outdated. So those that those that know that are aware. So any other questions? So I hope we are clear. Again, my sinuses act up sometimes. It's that season. So are you? So I hope I answered your questions and the questions of the lecture. This ham seed again, email. This is one of the latest. Actually, I think this was the last one that came out. No, not all Anunnaki are not. Most of the Pleiadians are Rh negative. A lot of the Pleiadian beings are Rh negative. They introduce their seed to kill off the Rh positive seed. And will it go? I think I addressed that in one of the earlier lectures. This designer genes as well. I went over this before. I think someone asked about what books, Good and Evil, Wahweh, Wu, Duwe, or Dahwe, right? Question. So is it Baba's job to get your consciousness, remembrance back into spiritual plane once the physical you pass? It's Baba's job to get your consciousness, remembrance back. Okay, so your consciousness is not disconnected from the spiritual abode. The spiritual abode is connected to the mental abode. Your remembrance of, are you saying remembrance of past lives? Now, the remembrance of past lives, that has to be unlocked. Jeanette, because from your super conscious, that from a conscious that was passed on through your bloodline, right? That's where the Father explains that every life that you've lived, you can remember, but it has to be brought by way of a master that's able to recall it through what you call regressive hypnosis. He said it's a very it's something that only a master can do, because some beings, when they get into those worlds and they open themselves up, they can get stuck out there. And it happens sometimes even when you astral travel, astral project. Some beings get stuck out, and that's what happens when a person loses conscious, or let's say they're unconscious, or they're in a vegetable state, not maybe vegetable, where a person is alive physically, but their conscience is not there. It's not that it's not physical, it's just that the brain is detached from the oversoul, from the 12 optical nerves, which are your etheric cords that connect to your oversoul. And that is where you pull from the mental reservoir. The mental reservoir is limited for your access. Our access has to be, only etheric beings who are responsible for the mental abode can give you more access to that abode than you normally have with the brain capacity that you have developed in these last few thousand years. Your brain capacity is limited, and therefore the amount of information that you receive is limited. Using 77%, you use your whole brain, but you only activate a certain amount to access the mental reservoir's conscious information that can be fed to your being. In order to receive more of the information, more light information, genetic alterations has to be done first. You have to have the Malchi Z in your body to align your endocrine system. I think we spoke about this in episode 4. So it's not a thing where you remember it's back into the spiritual plane, because you are on the spiritual plane now. You don't have to go back to the spiritual plane. You exist on the spiritual plane. You exist on the mental plane. You exist on all of these abodes right now at the same time, simultaneously right now. The remembrance of what you want to recall has to be, let's say, the word I'm looking for, organized, because the information can be so abundant that it, like I said, like the Father teaches, it will oversurge, it will overload your computer, your network. your being. It can overload you. If so much information of past lives coming at one time, you won't be able to organize the information in a way that is comprehensible. It's like pouring a bunch of data into a computer and it can't process it right. That's the same thing. So you're on the physical abode, you're on the spiritual abode, you're on all of those abodes simultaneously, right? And the remembrance of it comes from the etheric beings, the beings who are responsible for the access to the mental reservoir, allowing you to have access so you can remember, along with all of the body alterations or biological upgrades that will be able to take the information that you're supposed to receive. I hope that's clear. Okay, Ashok, how do we know if we are Panatharu or Anunnaki if we're both Nagaru in appearance? That's a great question. You wouldn't necessarily know that. First of all, because you're mixed, there's always the possibility of percentage of Panatharu or Anunnaki in your blood is like high. That's what this new being or Nubian being is. As a Nuwapian, you have those mixtures. It's very rare that you'll find an African that has no Anunnaki blood, within their genes. That's like going to the Sands tribe, and then that only tribe, because the haplogroups that exist right there, the L haplogroup, if there's no migrations and there's no intervention of any other breedings or any other mixing in from other tribes, then that seed will be only Nagardanatu, which is Natharu. If you, right, so you would rarely find a species or African that's not mixed on the planet unless you go to the Sands people. So the percentage is very high. Now, to answer your question, how would you know? Only Baba could tell you, and tell you your bloodline from that, because he knows the genetics of each and every one of us. He can look at you and tell. That's why a lot of the priests and the high, let's say the deities of ancient Makmet or ancient Egypt, they would look at a child and know where the child comes from, know the bloodline, right? Genetically, because they would protect the seed and know the seed and follow the particular bloodlines of, just like the bloodlines of Al-Mahdi, Muhammad Ahmed, all the way back to Prophet Muhammad, back to Kedar, back to Ishmael, and other bloodlines from the different deities of ancient Egypt and the Sabaean seed. So they knew the seed, they knew the bloodlines, because you would keep a record of it. So it's now knowing is not something that you would know off the bat, other than characteristics such as your hair texture, such as whether you have dark Negroid type features. Then the percentage of having Anunnaki blood is relatively low. But having Nubian hair, such as the Hadendawa or the Fuzzy Wuzzies or the Ethiopian or the Kushites, Sabaeans there, they have a curly mixture type hair. That's because there's other seeds that were brought in. So typically, from that physical characteristic, it's highly more probable that they're more of a mixture than a Negroid from Botswana who's dark or even curly or very, very coarse, tight hair. You would know that there's not a lot of genetic diversity within their chromosomes. So there's ways to tell, but just off bat, it's not something that I could answer, or something that the Father will be able to tell you. The question is, why have we gone to the Nuwapian Islamic Hebrews? Also, can you give reference? Okay, hold on a second, please. Oh, we haven't gone back. Okay. I'm glad you asked that question. We haven't gone back to Nubian Islamic Hebrew. That's a title that is not religious. Remember, Islam is not a religious title. It became a religious connotation. It became a religious title. It's not a religious Islamic Pale Arab Sunni Shiite doctrine title. That's not why we're using it. If you look at the root word, salama means peace, right? So it's in a state of peace when you look at the word. Nubian or Nuwapian is, and it's Nuwapian Islamic Hebrew. Nubian is the tribes or the mixtures that we just discussed. Nuwapian is how you think about your mind, how you reason. We address that. So that's the mind of the tribe of the nation, Nuwapian, right? The Sabaean or Musbatu, right? That's the characteristics of you as a people, as descendants of beings from the heavens, from the heavenly host, right? Genesis 2, where he speaks about children of Saba, the heavenly host. The word host is Saba, right? So, or Sabaean, right? Or record keeper, because you recorded your own story. You recorded the beings from the heavens, and you wrote it down, and you marked the time markers of the cycles of existence so you can keep up with your story. So as a Sabaean, then as a being who was responsible for record keeping and who paid attention to the heavens and who acknowledged your heavenly ancestors, that's a part of your existence as well as a Sabaean. Now, Islam as in a way of, as a, let's say, person who's in a state of peace and are responsible for acknowledging the various tribes from Ishmael, that Kedar, that went into the bloodline or created the bloodline of the Prophet Muhammad on down, and that family of Al Mahdiya, that's a specific tribe from Yahuda or Judah. So it's not a religious thing, it's a more tribal. And Hebrew is the same, it's the crossing over of those tribes into Africa, these migratory tribes, as a Hebrew or Ibri. So it's not religious in that sense, and we're not going back to it. It's just a more emphasis on, well, let's say this, as the Father said, as it was in the beginning, so shall it be in the end. But this is a combination of who you are, because your story is so diverse in the migrations and how you got to the West. You had to cross over through Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, and their bloodline, and the Black seeds out of those that were protected, coming into Africa, crossing over, Ibri crossing, right, into that area, and then and coming out of that and mixing in to become a Nubian. So you became a Nubian seed. That's why if you look up all of Sudan, Egypt, they're all mixed in. Then coming west again, migrating again west into the this obviously being brought in the slave trade, and then migrating as let's say the Malian or the Ghanaian, what's the word I'm looking for? Navigators, right? Who came to the South America, came to the islands, came to North America in their own boats and their own navigation tools, navigating through the stars as Sabaeans. They all landed and came to this side of the Western Hemisphere, and then mixed in. Now you should be in a state of peace because you know who you are. So it's not religious in that sense. So don't take it when the Father mentions things that it's a religious thing. And religion, when we say religion, we're talking about three monotheistic religions. Those are the monotheistic doctrines that have kept our people under their spell, though foreign religious doctrines, not your religion of animism. Animism is the acknowledgement of the spiritual world manifesting or animating the physical realm or the physical abode. All religions on the planet come from animism. And you were the first. That's the oldest religion in the world, animism. Look it up, you'll see. So it leaves you in a state of peace. So it's not in that way. Everything that the Father's teaching in his hereafter doctrine, there's no reference to be made to any other outside sources. So eliminate the connotation or the definition that's been placed in your mind by their labels, by their authorities, by their authors, and make the zero reference of our doctrine as your source and your zero reference point, because you have to be given renewed information. You have to be given information that has never been given before. You're not going to find reference to it anywhere. So don't take that title as something that we're going back to in a sense. So I hope that's clear. In episode 10, okay, how important it is to know your blood type in relation to the Anunnaki? Well, you're supposed to know your blood type regardless, for health reasons, not necessarily in reference to the Anunnaki. Because like I said, what Anunnaki you related to, that's something that we have to make sure when the Father comes home, so we'll be able to answer certain questions. He can answer the questions, like detailed questions such as that. If I don't find it in a book and not in an update, I'm not going to, speculate or try to mislead or sound deep. I'll just say I don't know, and that's something that I couldn't tell you what Anunnaki you related to, but knowing your blood type, that's to you, Born King. Knowing your blood type is just typically for your health reasons, just in case you need a blood transfusion, mixing in with other like if you have children or something. Sometimes if you know sickle cell, you have to know your blood type so you know the type of woman you mix in, not to bring the risk of sickle cell and things and cancers or whatever diseases that could be in the blood. Knowing your blood type, knowing your genetic makeup is relevant for your health and being able to mix it with the right person. But as far as the Anunnaki, I can't really speak on that. I hope that's clear. I think the Watusi tribe may be mixed with Hindu Doosua. Can you double check, please, Mr. I'll do that. I'll do that. The Watusi, yeah, I remember reading that in first language. He talked about the Watusi and the Hindus, because the Hindus were the religion. They used the Hindu religion. That's what was taught. But the Anunnaki taught the Hindu religion. That's the religion, that doctrine that they taught and breeded amongst. The Aryan race are the original Hindus. So I'll get specifics on that. Those are good questions. So for the next lecture, question, Baba said in the lecture he was trying to get us from solid physical back to liquid, which is spirit, I assume. Okay. So what will happen once you cross over and you're in tune, right? Where do you go? Okay, so there's a book called The Spiritual You After the Physical You Dies. Email me, and he has an entire master secret on that. But you don't go anywhere. It's not a place to go in that sense. Like, because we use the words crossover. This is what, in our world, in the world of human material world, crossing over means distance. But in the spiritual or etherical world, there's no crossing over, because it's all one. You exist within the spiritual world right now, right? It's like having ice in water. Ice exists. They're both ice. They're both water. They're both a form of water, a form of H2O. Let me say that, not water. Water is the liquid. Ice is the solid. One is more dense. The other is less dense. Steam is also H2O, but they're two different forms of the same component, same compound. So what happens is they all simultaneously exist as the same H2O, but because the densities are different, they look as if they're separate. That's the same thing happening with you as a physical material body. Because you're dense and you are retracting or reflecting light, you look stationary and separate from the rest of the etheric or spiritual world, and that's not the case. So it's the illusion of what your mind projects or creates as a holographic image that makes you feel as though you're separated from a world or from the spiritual world. Right? We are all within all and a part of all. So when the Father says, when you cross over, the physical body, yes, it does go back to the physical body does go back to the planet, right? But however, the spiritual and conscious you, there are rules that govern the physical body. There's rules that govern the conscious body, right? And so you exist. The spiritual world is just as real as the physical world. It's just not as dense. I actually had a real incredible experience of in the spiritual abode, speaking to beings who had crossed over and explaining to them how real it was there. It's the same as the physical. It's the same thing. It's really the same thing. That's a personal experience, but it's like I said, it's like the best correlation that I can give that I remember Baba is the three: solid, liquid, and gas, ice, water, and steam. So question. So it wasn't Black people in the Americas. We all come from Africa. There were black people in Americas. And then there's some that came into the Americas. So, that's a question. So if it wasn't black people in Americas, I don't know. I'm misunderstanding. So it wasn't black. I think that's a statement. Yeah, it was. There were black people. The ones that migrated. I did that in lecture. I think 6 or 7. It's called Identity Crisis and Nation Identified. One of those 2 lectures, I did an entire lecture. I had all of the notes in reference to the Native American tribes coming from the Bering Strait, how they split. One goes to the eastern board and the other comes down the western seaboard and into the South America. And then you had the African migrations and navigators that come over that were explorers that settled over into Mexico and other areas with archaeological proof. And then them mixing in with some of the tribes here to create the indigenous Americans who are indigenous blacks. And then you as Africans being brought over here, mixed in with the indigenous blacks, creating the Nubian Nation in the southeastern area. But I did it in episode 6. Thank you. Okay, you remember. Episode 6. I did it. That was a lecture that I covered that entire. Check out those episodes. A lot of questions you're asking is okay. If you check out, I mean, I know some of those episodes are 3 hours long. We're trying to cut them up to where we're putting out small clips because, there's a lot of content. But if you check out those episodes and get some answers to those questions from the actual, everything is coming from the Father, though. There's nothing that I would say, unless it's something from my opinion, me personally, that I would teach, right? That will that's outside of what the Father speaks in these actual facts of Patarat. Because I don't know that I don't have that no information, no extra information to give nobody. So the only thing I give is what we have, and that's just our job. And it's so much that we have to continue to do it, and that's why we're going to be successful, because facts will be forever. No matter how you feel, what goes on, the facts are the facts. So I hope that answered your question. I think that what Tusi tried. Yeah. Okay. So let me go back. Someone else asked a question. If that's why there's so many different tribes in Africa in genetics diversity, there are in that melting pot. Okay. All right. Question. Baba said, someone asked me a question about episode. Okay. Yeah. Episode 10. Did I move? Okay. Where's this question at? Someone said episode 10. Oh man, this computer's acting crazy. I don't know what's going on with my computer. Okay, there it is. Episode 10. You spoke about piercing and tattoos that can prevent you from ascending. Can you clarify it having a piercing prevent you? Well, permanent piercings, I mean, you can take it out. That's nothing. But so a piercing, piercings are okay. Piercings are not permanent. Metals in your body is what the Father was saying, and tattoos. Having a piercing is not a thing where it can prevent you from ascending. No, it's the metals in the body. Some people put metals in, and because it's a science. It's science. It's not necessarily a religious or judgmental moral thing. It's more so when you make the transition or you travel, when you're taken up and you go through a vortex. No metals can go through a vortex because of the effect the metal will have with the dimensional shift and the alteration of your biological makeup being transformed to a DNA that can be transported to the heavenly abode. And the metals can affect, because magnetism can alter your matrix in the recalibrating of your genetics. That's what he was explaining. Like some people have metal plates in their leg because of accidents and things of that nature. Now, I'm not the one to say you can't make it. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to say, oh, you can't make it, because I'm saying the Father mentioned these things that can prevent you from making it because of the not making it spiritually or mentally, but physically being taken. So I'll get more clarity on that part, because these are questions that are concerning people, because people have metals in their bodies. Certain people get hip operations or knee replacements, etc. It's not something that's like, okay, you're a bad person or you're a good person in that sense. No, it's more so the DNA has to be broken down and recalibrated on the other side, and your conscious, it has to be brought with it. And I'll get an update, because this question is in an update. There's an update where the Father speaks about that. A lot of the questions that y'all asked, then look for more answers in the next lecture, because I'll take the questions and get the information and give you where the Father speaks about it in a particular update, which is better, as opposed to me trying to quote something that I can't remember verbatim. I'd rather read it. So I'll do that for you and address that metal thing, because people have cavities with metal. I think it's a metal or lead filling and other things. But he was explaining how when your body is taken, because you're going through various dimensions and the gravity, there's anti-gravity there. So you can literally, your body can expand because there's no gravity. If you go to an environment, your body's taken through an environment that's anti-gravity, right? Then, or gravitational field, your body would explode, because your body's held together through gravity. And it takes certain physical components and elements to keep you in fit form. But if you have to travel through a black hole where it's entirely, the pressure is so, the pull is so strong that light can't escape it, then you have to go on the other side of light, ether, in order to travel through. And that's how these beings warp through space, because they have the technology to alter time, space, the measurement of time and space, where it's not dictated by physical laws of gravity, to and fro, push and pull. It's outside of that in order to travel interdimensionally. So there's a lot more to it than just not making it in that sense. So don't take that as you won't make it because you got, metal or two. No, just you take your earring out, take your nose ring out, whatever. So it's like that. But I'll get more clarity on it for you to be, for everyone to be clear on that. What is the meaning of the tattoos? The tattoos alter your DNA, because the ink that's in your genes, it's difficult to eliminate. I saw how the tattoo in your genetics, the ink stays within your genes, and then your genes, the skin cells attempt to remove the ink, but because the way the ink is, the chemical makeup of the ink, it can't be removed. Typically, if something is in your skin, your body has a natural mechanism or method of removing it. Like if food goes into your lung, your body creates mucus around it and eliminates it, creates a protective barrier around it so it doesn't scar your lung wall, the cilia in your lung, and then you're able to eliminate, you cough it up. And a lot of times if you have something stuck in your throat, you cough it up, there's mucus wrapped around it because that's the protective coating. The same thing happens when things is entered into your skin, meaning an object or whatever. Metals is difficult to, like bullets are in people's bodies that your body can't break down metal, but other compounds and things, your body can break it down and eliminate it. Your immune system is very strong and it's very durable. It can remove things from the inside. It just works miracles. But for some reason, tattoo ink, the way the chemical makeup is of it, your body can't eliminate it. It doesn't eliminate it, and so it creates havoc in your immune system. Really, trying to fight this foreign object in your body. You probably don't know the effects. Look it up though. Look up the effects of how your skin tries to remove tattoo ink and why is it difficult to do that. And you'll see the type of the mechanism that's taking place every day with your body trying to eliminate this ink. So that I know that has an effect on your genetics. Now, I'm not saying you totally won't make it because of that. No, I'm not in a position to say that. Don't say Doosua I said I ain't gonna, please. And don't feel upset or feel any kind of way. I'm just trying to bring clarity on these things so you'll understand that these are the facts of how these beings have set the criteria up. There's a criteria of making it to the heavens and being capable of existing there. Your genes have to be purified. Certain songs that you listen to and foods that you like, your certain addictions that you have that you're not really familiar with. You're not aware of it because you're not in another environment where it doesn't exist. If you go to an environment where you don't hear no rap, no R&B, the type of music you like, you don't see the foods that you typically are used to, the chemicals that you used to eat every day, you don't know how addictive that is until you're in an environment where there's no sugar. And you never had sugar, you don't have sugar, your body goes through a withdrawal. Your body goes through a withdrawal of meat. Certain chicken has these chemicals in it that affects your taste buds and affects your genes where you become addicted to it. Some people can't drink water. Why? Because they say it has no taste. And that this is a real phenomenon. You say some people, it's difficult to drink water because they're accustomed, or they program their genes to only take in things that have a taste. What kind of taste? Salt, sugar, sweet, sour, right? So if there's no salt in the food, they say it's bland. It doesn't taste good. Vegetables, people have to add salt to vegetables. And it's like, wow, if you can't eat peas without something on it. That's because you're so used to unnatural things. It doesn't make you a bad person. The facts have to be pointed out so you'll be aware of how the devil has destroyed and affected our bodies and our minds. A lot of us are not aware of it. The Father, this is why this doctrine is cleansing, because it's like that's a real reality. When we moved on the land, we wasn't it was a very strict spiritual disciplined place. You could leave if you want. Don't make it think that, I don't want people get crazy when you start talking about things like that. What I'm saying is, when you came on our land and to our nation, a lot of our culture and our behaviors, the Father was eliminating certain things out of our lives that we didn't even know was detrimental. So the diets that we had and the foods that we had, most of the foods were so natural that we went months without sugar. And you go and drink one of the fruit drinks from one of those markets in town or whatever, and it will be disgusting because you didn't know how much sugar was in those drinks until you didn't have sugar and your body just totally cleansed or detoxed from sugar. That is the most addictive drug in the world. It's more addictive than crack. So when you are not partaking of it and you like, wow, a lot of the seasonings that you have, a lot of the foods that you have. So those things that has been introduced into society is not something that you're in control of. You just have to be aware to know in your culture that you've picked up, that you've gotten from Wu Sabat, your spiritual science. You're going to have to be transformed back into the God that you are. And that's being totally in control of your senses. And part of being in control of your senses is your desires and saying what you can. And some people say, I can't eat a meal without meat. They literally placed it in their mind that they can't do that. Or I can't drink tea without sugar. Some people have never had tea without sugar. It's like, how can you drink tea without sugar? Well, the herb is available. Take it without sugar. Try it. And see if you can control your urge to put some crystal meth sugar crack in your drink. You can control it. You just have to do it. Does cremation affect soul travel for us? Oh, y'all asking some very, very good questions. I'll get back with you on that, Philly. There's an update on that where Baba talks about death. It's a lot of it's for several weeks, for some months. He was talking about death, and people was asking questions about death. He was answering questions about cemeteries. He answered the questions about cremation, right? He answered questions about visiting a person's graveyard. He said you have to keep it clean. That's their house. So that's all they ask for you, to keep their resting place nice, right? Different beings would come to the Father and speak to him, right? Different family members who crossed over, certain beings that were Sabaeans, Nuwapians that transitioned to the other life. Baba would give messages from them. He'd be like, yeah, they're fine. They said they're doing good. They don't have any more pain. They don't have any more aches. A lot of them exist in the spiritual world, and they enjoy the spiritual world. We're the ones here in the physical that's having toothaches, back pains, money problems, issues, relationship issues, trying to find food. We're having all of those issues. They don't have those issues there. I remember one update, he was explaining how they can fly and run as fast as they want, don't have to sleep. I think it's some type of rest there, but not the rest of slumber. All types of things that just makes the spiritual world so beautiful. I'm like, wow, that must be incredible. So he was explaining certain things about it in these updates. So I'll do a lecture on an update. So all of y'all doing is really creating future lectures for us. So keep those great questions coming. I appreciate it. Wow, we've been talking 2:30. Wow, 2 hours and 30 minutes. I didn't know that. Okay, more questions are coming. Because I missed a few. I think the 19th, right? We missed the 19th, right? Are we going to have to battle draconian reptilians that live inside the earth? No, they don't play with Baba. Let me tell you this. Y'all don't. We really don't. I don't really totally comprehend. I just know what he told us. He said they don't play with me. The father's. He's that warring angel. He's not just some being that's incarcerated and people think, oh, he's succumbed to the system, they got him and all that craziness. That's not who that being is in there. He's there because he wants to be there. This is a fact. I'm not saying you can don't believe me, check it out. That's something you probably can't check out other than what he's saying, but he has the power to walk out of there right now if he wants. And I'm not saying that's because, right, it's something that I'm making up. These are facts that I've experienced. People have seen him out, right? And there's certain witness, and I think my brother, the extraterrestrial, people have seen the father out and about. People have seen him in dreams. He doesn't just visit people's dreams. He visits people physically in real life. They know who he is. They don't think they don't know who this being is, right? And he's there for a reason. He's doing that for a reason. To get full disclosure, he'll explain it when he's out. But he said, I decided to come in here to get this affirmation to you all because one, he said he was being distracted from everybody and he couldn't have the time to write all of the books. He wrote all of the actual facts while he was incarcerated. He said, so I was able to perfect the culture and spend much time with myself and my race to give you this affirmation and restore your culture. He said, if I was out doing building, he said, we'd have still been building. We'd have still probably had Tom and Ray going the way it's going, and he wouldn't have time to sit down and give us this affirmation. That's just one of the reasons. But as you get more and learn who he is and experience the magnificence of him and overstanding, for those that are new, you may not, you may hear certain things and be like, wow, and, contemplate on it. Some people have experienced the Father in the miracles. So the conviction for myself is different because I've seen some things that maybe we'll discuss just an entire lecture on the miracles of Yaanuwn. I think that would be great, so I can explain and give you all my eyewitness experiences, my spiritual experiences with the Father, even to this very day. And it's miracles happen every day. It's so many, I can't even explain them. It's like incredible. And people email about their experiences, and don't be ashamed of them because he's for us, right? He's for he loves all of us. Before I got on this lecture, I was like, I wanted to tell you all how much the Father loves you all and his children on this planet to sacrifice and come here and to whip the devil's butt to make sure you all are prepared for this next 24,000 year cycle and renew our story and live in glory the way that we're supposed to. And it's going to happen. Okay, so when can we vote? Oh, okay, let me address this vote thing. Because now this vote, okay, a lot of people are saying they want to vote. I put up the update. Okay, making sure my computer plugged in. That's interesting. I be having the craziest tech issues. If y'all know the type of issues I end up having from doing these lectures, stuff that you would never think. Okay, so the vote is this. The vote is not, you can't vote right now. Okay, let me get back in view. Camera's out of view. Okay, so please do. Can't rest not knowing is that. What's up with this? Could you explain? I'm trying to get the camera back in view. Hold on, people. Okay. So let me get, so the vote. Okay, the vote, you can't vote now. You'll vote once the website launches. But the website is not, it's up, right? I know I'm blurry. It's okay. The website is up, but it's just your information about the vote, about your voters' rights. It's not something, it's not allowing you to register yet. So when you go to the site, you're just going to read your voting rights. When you're able to vote, you'll see a registration when the site goes live. So please be patient. You're not missing out on anything. You're not missing out on anything. I'm trying to get in view, y'all. Don't worry about me. You're not missing out on anything, right? The vote will happen, and we're gonna vote May, June, July, moving forward. So don't stress yourself. Just check out the website. When you look at the website, it's in the description. You'll see how it just gives you your voters' information. So you'll be able to vote. It will go up, and I'll let everyone know, and you'll receive an email. Please, can't rest not knowing is there a bypass? Okay, love Baba for sure. Could you explain one miracle? Does lead count as metal? Yes, it does. One miracle. Wow. Let me see. One miracle. Okay. And why is this camera acting crazy, y'all? One miracle. Okay, one miracle. It was about 10 years. Let me try to get this camera back in view. Hold on. All right. Okay, there it is. It was locked for a second. One miracle. Let me give you one. I used to speak to the Father on the phone. I'm in Ghana now, so I haven't spoken to him in some time, but we still communicate, not just by phone. I was having a dream about the night before. I used to go to his house and receive calls from him. He had 15-minute calls, I think every week, twice a week or something like that. So I would go receive a call at his house in Decatur. The night before, I was having a dream about the freedom fight and what was needed. And I was doing some research, and I found out some real vital information. It was more along the lines of about our land and the angle we would have to go for the freedom fight. And it was just an incredible dream. And in the dream, me and Bob, we were talking. I was speaking to him. We was talking. We was laughing, and it was just so real. And then I woke up. I was like, "Wow, that's crazy." So I went to the house. We get the phone call. He called, 15-minute call. I get on the phone. He immediately goes into. He was like, "Yes, son, let me tell you about this dream. I had a dream about you last night." And he was talking about the same thing that I was talking about the night before. And he was asking about the person he was mentioning in the dream. So meanwhile, I'm just blown away about this. I'm like, he's asking about the person that he was asking about in the dream. He said, "So did you get the guy's name?" And I'm like, and I'm still couldn't think of the name because he asked me in the dream, but I actually forgot about that part. After the dream, I forgot about that person he was asking about until he asked about it on the phone. And I'm saying, Oh, I said, oh snap. He said, I said, Baba, I said, I had a dream about you last night. I said, I had a dream too about you. He said, silly, we were dreaming at the same time. And that was just one that just kind of floored me. So I'm like, in my mind, we actually visited each other in the dream. So that was just one of the many miracles. You can imagine the type of how he's talking is like it's so normal. But in my mind, I'm like, this is not normal. I mean, this is not normal to have a dream. Someone's on the other side of the world. You're here. You meet in the etheric world, have a dream conversation, and then the person asks you, right, about the dream, and re-asks the question. I'm like, I don't know the person. I was blown away. I just forgot the guy's name, everything. It was just incredible. So this is so many stories that go way back. I'm sure there's elders that's around that can give you, but we'll do a lecture on this specifically, the many miracles of Yaanuwn. We'll do that so we can understand and see the type of things that's taking place, even 2026 right now. So I just feel incredible to have those experiences, and we all going to have. That's why it's important for us to fight on his freedom and make sure he gets out. And we're fighting on his freedom. He'll be out. And once he's home, I hope you all have the opportunity to experience the Father in flesh, because he is God in flesh. Can't nobody tell me nothing different. Nobody can come anywhere on the planet. I'll stand 10 toes down and have a discussion about this being and the miraculous works and the outformation and the nations he's raised, the minds he's elevated, and just so much to talk about and so much to learn. Yes. Okay, Doosua, with me, what happened about a year ago, he said to me, it is a dream, just do it, and dance to song I didn't make until a few weeks ago. Okay, and dance to the song I didn't make until. Oh, okay, wow. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Oh, the song that you made. You saying that happened a year ago? He said to me in a dream, "Just do it." Wow, that's nice. Yeah, it's a lot of it's a book called there was a book called Man of Miracles, Part 1 and 2, and it's an incredible. Has so many different healings, how he's healed people, how he's teleported, how he's read people's minds, how he's it's just this being 76 trillion years of knowledge. That some people are connected to him, he's who he is to you, because when you see his face, some people see his face and they know. Some people don't have to read the books, they already know who he is. Some people can hear his voice and become a Sabian Nuwapian right then on the spot. Some people have already been a Nuwapian, just was thinking the way that we think and didn't find us until maybe this episode. It just depends. There's so many different variations, but ultimately we're all one family. And that's what we need to understand, that the Father and his love for us and giving us this affirmation, we will be worshiping and being amongst this religious people in a sea of ignorance with no way out if he hadn't come to us and to teach us in this planet. Okay. Yeah. So any other question? I think, well, another 2 hours and 42 minutes. I think we should end this before they cut me off or cut the lights out or cut the internet off. All types of things happen. So any other questions? I hope you all enjoyed this lecture. I mean, we covered, I hope it was clear. It may take a few minutes. We'll go over it again. There's more information that needs to be done. It's very difficult to drop everything from these actual facts in a 2 or 3 hour period. It literally takes a lifetime, but we do our best. And I hope you appreciate the Actual Facts channel. So we'll have some announcements. Our next one is May 9th. We're still working on the website announcements. We're working on the website. The website is up, but it's only a page. It's not the complete site. It's only just your voters registration rights and laws. So just get the word out. The Now or Never campaign is going on. It's now or never. That's it. The Father will be free. You all are still a part of his nation. You all still have a right to vote. Nothing has changed. regardless of what people doubt, they don't know, you have questions, email if you have questions, find out. Let's all grow and be a part of the same mission, be a part of the family. The United Nubian Nation, right, website is not in conflict with, let me make this statement, it's not in conflict with the United Sabaeans Worldwide. We're all family. The United Nubian Nation is the governmental website. It's a website that deals with the government structure of the legal aspect of our nation, right? The United Sabaeans Worldwide is also a government fact. There's many government factions in a nation. There's many institutions in a nation. Don't think that because you have a institution here, defense ministries here, ministries of justice there, Department of Interior there, that they're all in conflict because they have. That's not how that works. That's not how nations are. Some nations, in nations, you have people that work with the healthcare. Some people are responsible to deal with the infrastructure. Some are responsible for finances. Some are responsible for the executive branch or the legislative body, or the canons, the elders. You have various orders. You have all orders of a nation, right? You have the lodge, you have the shrine, you have OES. All of those are different factions of the Nubian Nation. So don't create division where there is none. Don't create unnecessary friction where it really is none. It only exists because you're not aware, and just all you have to do is seek out questions. There's no division amongst us. So when people look at it and say, "Oh, they're doing that," we're not doing we're doing what the Father, our president, as the head of the Nubian Nation, the head of the state of Nubia, Sabaeans Worldwide, all of it. He's the head of it all. So that's who we acknowledge, and we follow the protocol and follow the orders of which that's given to us from the executive, right? And therefore, the United Nubian Nation, we're doing the votes. We're responsible for organizing the legal aspect as it relates to the international aspect. You have an external, you have an internal. Nations have external bodies, they have internal bodies. You have an internal body, your organs and cells and digestive system and everything's on the inside that no one sees. Then you have an external that communicates with other people, other human beings, with society. The same thing with a nation. A nation has internal governance, internal areas, the internal infrastructure, the institutions, the orders, the whatever, the publications, the actual facts, the meetings, those things are internally. You have the tribal issues. Tribes have internal issues, right? All nations have internal issues. You have fights in nations. People get arrested and thrown in jail in a nation. That's how nations are. But then you have the external. Nations have the ambassadors and individuals who talk and communicate with nations that are not aware of what's going on the internal. Just like you meet a person, they don't know what's going on the inside of you. It's the respect, though, reciprocity that you have with meeting another person or another nation. So it's the same thing. Don't, because of your ignorance, and not as a bad negative thing, we all are ignorant to certain things, right? It's okay. That's how you learn. If you wasn't ignorant to something, how would your drive or quest to learn be amplified? You want to learn because you don't know. You're ignorant things like, okay, I want to get the facts. And that's what should drive you. The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And so it's okay. So don't let the people create division and all of that unnecessary human emotion that has nothing to do with our freedom, has nothing to do with the Father's freedom, has nothing to do with our development, mental transformation, has nothing to do with anything. It's just insignificant. Emotions come and go. Tomorrow, you're going to feel differently that you felt today. But the nation is absolute. It's still moving. The nation is still moving forward. Our vote for the Father is still there, and our freedom quest is still on the horizon. And it's going to happen, and the Father will be free. So with that, I appreciate you all. Much love to you all. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you share. Tune in May 9th. We'll probably drop a few videos in between time. If you don't hear from me like live, that means I'm busy. The priority over teaching and getting these actual facts to you is the Father's freedom. That's what I do. I don't have no other job. I don't work for anybody. I work in my office, the ambassador's office, from our embassy, working on the Father's freedom and making sure we have these actual facts, patrak, and the affirmation that he wants out, because that's his two main requests. Make sure you work on my freedom and make sure you get this doctrine or affirmation to the people so that their souls can be saved for what's about to take place. So that's what I'm doing. There's nothing more, nothing less. So I appreciate you all much. I hope I'm clear. If you got any suggestions for it, make sure you send your questions too. I don't mind questions. Oh, my apologies if I don't get back to your emails. Sometimes it takes a few days. Sometimes they get pushed down. So I try to cover people's emails. And the books, make sure if you want the publications, I'll direct you to them. Email me. Any questions, email. I answer as soon as I can. I appreciate you all. I love you all. And let's keep moving. It's our time. The time is now. Take care. Wadu.